This story starts with the phrase, "live for your house." That's what the father always told our protagonist. The meaning behind it was that he should never desire anything for himself, and should always live in the shadow of his older brother. Our hero falls to the ground, and the soldiers around him say they never imagined one person could stand against so many knights. A man with long hair says it's expected from the brother of that person. The man standing in front of him is Boris, who gives a twisted smile as Sean asks, "Who sent him?" With daggers in hand, he wants to know if it was the Emperor. As Xian activates his power, Boris mocks the disgusting Mist and says that Xian is an assassin from the Mist group. Because of that, he must be eliminated for affiliating with heretics. Owen wishes him luck in trying to get out alive, but Boris tells him that he's already placed a 9-star barrier around the area. Owen realizes he must get out quickly and find out who caused the incident involving his brother. He tells Boris that he will break through any barrier he put up. Suddenly, someone says, "Stop, Xian." Xian is startled and speechless, remembering his father's words, "Live for your house," and how his brother, Ekkel, is the house itself. The success of the house depends on Ekkel's success. Xian can't believe it. The one behind it all, in the end, was his own brother. He falls to his knees while Ekkel asks why he's there. As his brother approaches, Xian asks what all this means. Eshel says that Shinin has done his job very well so far, but for the sake of the house, and of Shinin himself, he will now free him from his sins. Shinin doesn't understand what he did wrong. Looking at his mist, Eshel says it's disgusting, and that Shinin hasn't been human for a long time. He shouts that Shinin has been deceiving everyone. Shinin thinks about those words and loses his mind. It doesn't make sense. The troubles with the imperial throne, the subjugation of the Demon King's army, the war to unify the continent, he helped his brother win all of that and achieve everything he has. He punches the ground, saying that the life he was given, he dedicated to that person, and now he wants to throw him away, after going so far. After working like a dog for 20 years. Xuan says that even if his body breaks, he'll give everything he has in this moment, as long as he can kill him. The soldiers are shocked by the mana he still has. Transformed, Xuan says his brother is shameful, the only so-called hero, trying to kill a member of his own family. Echel looks with contempt, and Xian charges. He's managing to hold his own, saying he only needs one strike. He sees an opening and goes for the attack, but hits a barrier. The fight isn't one-on-one. Boris is protecting Echel, who takes advantage of it, and lands a blow to Xian's stomach. With his sword lodged in Xian, Echel says he considered letting him go easily, but now Xian has shown his dark side. Echel says he's relieved he never trusted Xian, not even for a second. He pulls out the sword, kicks San and leaves with his group. Lying on the ground, San thinks what a ridiculous end this is. It makes no sense to die like this. But suddenly, he attacks again, saying, "Die," as he presses a dagger to Echel's neck. However, a burst of light sweeps through his body. A voice calls him young master, and a boy wakes up, sweating in bed. The maid asks how long he plans to sleep. Sensei asks if it's Emily. Looking at her, he says it's been 20 years since they met. But she looks just like the day he first saw her. He recognizes the room. It's the one he lived in when he was younger. It hits him. He's returned to the past. Emily tells him to stop stalling in bed and go train. He wonders what training she's talking about. Realizing he's back in the Duchy of House Vert, he's certain this is the past. Maybe they're just memories, but he remembers everything perfectly. It's the 1st of March 27 years ago, 1 year before he entered the academy. At the beginning of each month, there was a public sparring event, an important occasion even for his father. His opponent was a boy named Krant, a brother born from another mother but the same age as him. His own mother, Marguerite, was the Duke's official wife. Because of that, her son received much more attention. Lucien, being the son of a concubine, was humiliated that day. It was then that his father told him to do nothing and give up. Emily asks him why he won't give up now. Now, he says he'll win quickly. However, he hesitates when he realizes that even a simple thin sword feels extremely heavy in this body. Now, he's sure this isn't a dream, or just a memory. Still, he's never heard of magic like this, and starts to wonder if he really did go back to the past. Krante says it's impressive that he didn't run away. When Sean looks at his father, the man simply says to begin. His brother charges at him, asking where he's looking, clearly confident that this will be easy. But Sean wonders why he's moving so slowly. One step to the side and his brother swings at the air. Krantez calls him a coward, and moves in for another strike. But Sean lands a hit that makes him drop his sword. Then, a kick to the shin leaves Krantez in agony, and he falls to the ground crying. His mother calls out for him while their father seems intrigued. Looking at him on the floor, Cyan knows that if he puts the blade to Krante's neck, it'll be over. But he remembers how, in the past, this guy used to torment him. The bullying continued even at the academy. So now, he has to end this, to make sure Krantes never dares do anything like that again. In this second life he's been given, he's going to live for himself. The fight ends with Krantes completely defeated. The Duke delays some of his plans because he wants to speak with Cyan and even assigns one of his knights to keep an eye on him. In the hallway, Cyan sees Krante's mother and is sure she just returned from the infirmary. With a mischievous smile, Cyan asks, "Is your son doing well, Duchess?" She snaps back, calling him shameless for saying that after doing such a thing to his brother. Oken, Cyan ignores her, saying things like that are normal during training. The Duchess says that's exactly why illegitimate children shouldn't be spoken to. Filthy mothers, filthy sons, she says, adding that he should have been picking garbage off the streets. Cyan looks back, thinking she crossed the line, and wonders if he should kill her. But instead, he smiles, remembering he knows how to make her suffer slowly. He tells her that he'll be joining the same academy as Krantes. She asks what he means by that. He wonders aloud if she isn't worried about her son's graduation. She scowls and moves to slap him, asking how he dares say such things. But the guard steps in and protects Cyan, apologizing to her. Still, the Duke is calling for the boy, so they can't waste time there. Cyan stares at the Duchess and says they're leaving. She remains angry, but there's nothing she can do. Cyan did that because he knows that the Duke's order is absolute, and the knight was ordered to protect him. In the office, his father tells him to come in. Cyan enters and introduces himself, thinking that the last time he saw this man like this was 15 years ago. Duke Vert, people call him the protector of the continent. With his magical power and military strategies, he stopped the demon army's invasion. Even if the entire Demon King's army wanted him dead, all he ever wanted was peace for the continent. But that was only how he was in Cyan's memories, someone who dedicated his whole life to serving the people and being an admirable man. The first thing the Duke says is that he noticed Cyan saw the sword coming and dodged it. Cyan is confused, but the Duke explains that when Krantes ran in, Cyan easily saw the sword's trajectory and turned to avoid it. He asks when Cyan learned that kind of swordsmanship. Cyan is impressed by how observant his father is and says he taught himself. Wallace says that, as far as he knew, Cyan had no interest in swordsmanship, or was he hiding his skills all along? Cyan says he didn't want to stand out too much. Wallace replies that it's impressive that he beat Krantes even while holding back, but then he hesitates and asks why Cyan struck his brother like that at the end. Cyan wonders, is he recognizing me as someone strong? Then he says he wanted to prove something. Wallace asks, what did you want to prove? Cyan says, even though we're brothers, I wanted to prove that I'm better than Krantes. His father bursts into laughter, then says it's incredible to hear such a direct and honest answer. He hopes that one day, Suan will become a strong ally of Ekrel. The name Ekrel shocks Suan and he wonders why he would ever want to ally with that guy. In the end, his father's obsession with Ekrel hasn't changed at all. He clenches his fists but says nothing. Wallace says there won't be any reward ceremony, but he can ask for something. Shen's plan is obvious. He wants to destroy everything Eder is working toward, so he tells his father what he wants. It cuts to the maid asking if he really wants to go to the warfront. He says yes. She's shocked and asks if he's out of his mind. He has no idea how terrifying that place is. It's filled with demons, monsters, and creatures. In the western part of the Empire of Velhaz, there's a place known as the continent's Frontline, a battlefield where an endless war against the demon army has been raging for 100 years. Because of that, his father, initially hesitant, gave him a condition. He would have to be qualified enough to go there. But Cyan didn't know exactly what that meant. One thing is certain though, he has to become as strong and as fast as possible. Fortunately, he still retains all his battle knowledge from before his regression, and can even feel a bit of demonic power inside him. He just needs to train, and eventually he'll be able to use it. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and someone yells his name. With a hand on her hip, he recognizes her. It's big sister Alice. Whoa! Welcome back. She grabs him by the collar, and the maid asks where she's been, while Lucy is shouting at Cyan asking if he's lost his mind. She heard that he asked their father to send him to the front lines. Cyan is begging her to let go of him. She throws him to the ground and tells him he's getting too full of himself just because he defeated Krantes. She yells in his face, telling him to go up to the roof right now. Outside the castle, the two meet on a bridge. Ely says the match will begin the moment he touches his sword. After that, he just has to survive for 3 minutes, and she'll allow him to go to the front lines. Shan wonders if they really need to do this, but Elise ignores him and says she has a question. Is he planning to succeed the family? Shan is caught off guard, but he has no interest in that at all. Before he can answer, Elise tells him to draw his sword. He thinks that he's barely regressed and is already being forced to fight twice. Without saying a word, he charges forward because he touched the sword, but he's startled, not knowing why. He manages to block her strike, and she's confused that he was able to block it at all. Shincharan is in disbelief that she's seriously going all out against a brother who's 7 years younger. Hale steps back gracefully, thinking it's impossible that he blocked her long sword with just that thin rapier. She bites her lip, thinking maybe it was just luck, and says aloud that he seems to be better than she thought. Shendrain realizes now he's in trouble, as she comes at him with a flurry of slashes that are hard for him to dodge. She leaps into the air to prepare a vertical strike. Shendrain manages to defend with his shoulder. Her blade slides down his and ends up near her neck. Elise flinches in shock, and Shendrain realizes he messed up. He twists his arm, and both of them pull back. He stops on top of a pillar and thinks that it would have been dangerous if he hadn't moved the sword. He could have killed her. All the assassination techniques he learned are designed for instant kills. He doesn't know how to fight without killing, but she still wants to continue for 3 minutes. It's going to be dangerous for her. Maybe he could channel some mana into his blade, but he's already running low on energy. Suddenly, Elisa begins chanting an incantation, calling for the wind to become her sword. Shen immediately recognizes it as a 6-star magic spell. Her blade begins to glow with the activation of water blade. The boy is crying now. She's really trying to kill me. This isn't a test at all. Meanwhile, Elise keeps repeating to herself that she cannot lose no matter what. On the edge of the wall, Shen realizes the problem. If he reflects her attack, he might end up either killing her or knocking her off. If that's the case, he jumps toward her as she raises her sword, releasing a beam of light. Shen pleads internally, begging something inside him to stop hesitating and come out already. As Elise prepares to deliver the slash, just before impact, a knight steps between them and yells, "That's enough." He blocks Elise's attack with his sword and grabs Shen by the collar. The impact echoes through the entire castle. The knight glares at Elise, saying she's gone too far against a young boy. Cyan feels relieved. He had been waiting for this guy to show up, but he took too long. When Elise sees the knight's sword, she seems to snap out of it. She immediately runs to Cyan, hugs him and apologizes, saying she lost control. She cries on his shoulder, saying the last thing she wanted was for him to go to the front lines. She's too worried about him. As she embraces him, Siming thinks that she truly is an Onim, a person who studied at one of the academies of Growl and was one of the most qualified swordswomen. On top of that, she had a beautiful face and was recognized as the daughter of God. Everyone believed she would one day stand beside the protector of the continent and the Vert family. However, not long after joining the Knights of Light, she met a tragic end. Shen hugs her back, saying he missed her, and this time he's going to protect her. Elise then asks the knight why he's here. Is he the Duke's bodyguard? The knight replies that he's here under the Duke's orders to protect the young master. Shen thinks back and realizes he had felt this man's presence ever since leaving the Duke's office. That's why he was so mad that the guy took so long to appear. He almost passed out. What he still doesn't understand is why his father sent someone to protect him in secret. Shen then collapses on Elise's shoulder. She smiles softly, thinking, he really is still a child. The next day she returned to the academy, and Shoan resumed his training to prepare for his next meeting with his father. All he could do was push his body to the limit to build up stamina, but the poor guy is exhausted. 10 push-ups is the most he can handle. Remembering his peak Kegen, he realizes he'll need to take drastic measures. Suddenly, Emily walks into the room and says that Alighty sent him something, but then she says it smells awful. What is that? After Alighty attacked him, she sent Hellhound blood as an apology gift. Because of its terrible smell and disgusting appearance, everyone assumes it's poison, but in reality, it has the power to permanently boost stamina in anyone who drinks it. Holding her nose, Emily asks if he's really going to drink that. Shen says yes, and jokes that he's the only one who can even eat her cooking. So this should be fine. He remembers the purple mushroom soup she made before, and this smells way better than that disaster. He slams the cup down on the table and says it was delicious. She's standing there, so fine, he'll pretend it was. Now radiating a strange aura, Cyan calls out to Emily, who asks what's going on. He looks back with glowing red eyes and says he's going for a walk. He wants to see how the medicine is working. He begins walking outside the castle, and stops near a large stone, saying he's been wanting to come here for a long time. This was the place he used to visit when he wanted to be alone. But one day, a revelation from the God of Light was given to his brother Ekkel, about an ancient temple hidden in this place. Saman had always been skeptical about that story. As he touches the ground, he mutters that no one knows about this revelation yet. Suddenly, the ground cracks open and a red mist begins to rise. He says that what he's about to do is something Ekul could never have imagined. Looking at the underground passage, Xuan wonders if it's finally time. As he walks inside, he notes how different it looks from before. This was once a place that served the god of light, until it was destroyed. That happened during the Holy War 300 years ago. Suming says that it's hard to believe a place like this even exists. On top of the altar he sees a glowing sword and immediately recognizes it as the sacred weapon of that temple. Back in the year 999, the humans finally managed to drive the demons out of the Velha's empire. That's when they discovered divine artifacts, known as the Treasures of God. One of those artifacts was the holy sword Drandark, the blade that led humanity into war against the demons. It was the same sword that Ekul used to kill him during his tragic end. Staring at the sword, Sumjranga wonders if it's somehow connected to his regression. He touches it hesitantly, but then lowers his head, saying he knew nothing would happen. Frustrated, he kicks the sword and walks away, saying that it made him feel worthless. But then, shadows start appearing beneath the light. Suming says he's finally found what he was looking for. Looking at the ground, he notes that anyone would think it's just the sword's shadow, but it isn't just a shadow. He touches the floor and says, "Where there is light, there is shadow." Suddenly, stairs appear, leading down to a door swallowed in darkness. Xian opens the door, hesitating, and when he looks at the altar inside, he finally finds what he came for, the demonic blade. Ear on. He grips the dagger. There's a carved crystal embedded in the dagger. Xian speaks to the blade, telling it that it can wake up now. He continues swinging it in all directions, a bit hesitant seeing that apparently it really is still asleep, but he's clearly falling for it. Swinging a blade he used his whole life really does feel kind of nice. Suddenly, a shadow begins to rise from the ground, saying that he is a very brave child. The shadow asks Cyan if he knows the meaning of taking that dagger. He replies that it means it's his now. The shadow grows larger, and says she can't believe he actually awakened a demonic blade. With a creepy tone, she says it's too late. She flies toward him, saying that now his body belongs to her. However, Xian grabs her by the neck, leaving her confused. A face appears within the shadows, and Xian says that back then, he didn't have much choice. The blade asks how he's able to touch her, and he answers that he already told her, she's his now. The painted pink-clawed blade slashes at him, but he dodges and steps back. She takes the opportunity to gain some distance, and wow, that's the strongest weapon I've ever seen a protagonist wield. She then asks who he is. Seeing the shadow emerging from his body, she wants to know if he's the heir, or at least, why he possesses the heir's energy. He says yes, he is the heir. Now that he's the master, she'd better behave and bow her head. Kieran is seething with rage, saying he's just a brat. She charges at him, saying she won't accept this. While defending himself, Xian knows that the blade's true purpose is to steal the body of its wielder, so there's no way around it. She's just about to strike, when he wonders if he should hold back. With a sly smile, he activates the control of the demonic blade. Kieran is slammed to the ground, unable to comprehend what just happened. He warns her that he'll say this only once, she should accept it while he's still being nice. Completely suppressed, Kieran wants to know how he's using this ability. Sumian simply activates the blade's control again, and slams her to the ground. Before she can say anything he activates it 3 more times. Seeing her buried into the floor, he asks if she understands now. She replies that she truly does recognize him as her master. He's about to use the power one last time, when she calls him my lord. With that, Shenj completes his goal there. He wonders if he should return before someone notices he's gone. In his hands, Kieran says she's looking forward to feeling the fresh air outside. She's super excited, even tossing out a little heart emoji. She's all curious, asking for his name. When he tells her, the blade asks if he really was chosen as the heir. Xian says yes, but that it happened in his past life. Now she's confused by this whole past life business. He explains that he's already died once. She looks even more puzzled. This guy is seriously unhinged. When he approaches the sword, she tells him that it's asleep, and Shin responds that its owner will show up in 20 years. Kieran wants to know how he's even doing this, but he's already unsheathing the sword. Without hesitation, he cuts the hilt. Kieran asks what he's doing. With a somewhat possessed look, Suin says he has no idea, but it's going to be an interesting future. The next morning, a carriage departs from Houseverse Castle. The promised day had arrived far too quickly. Shemdrayan presents himself before his father, who asks once again, is he truly determined to go to the front lines? Simshan responds that yes, his heart is already there. The Duke gives a nod and tells the knight to release the beast. The knight takes out a scroll, and Cyan wonders if he's about to use summoning magic. The scroll glows with a red pentagram. A creature with flames on its back begins to emerge, until a hellhound stands face to face with Cyan. Seeing the creature, Cyan is sure that his father and the knights have prepared this test well. Everyone's hands are on their hilts, ready to draw. Cyan realizes they're being cautious with his life. His father reminds him that everything comes with responsibility. He must prove his will by passing this test. Hearing the word test, the knight becomes hesitant. He was confused when Cyan asked to train with him. Our protagonist had said he had 3 days before the test and needed to prepare as best he could, so he asked the knight for help practicing combat techniques. The knight told him that if he wanted training, he should ask Chancellor, someone his own age. Cyan played dumb, saying he didn't know why, but Chancellor blanks every time he sees him. The knight realized he was in a tough spot. Lucien smiled when the knight agreed to grant his request, but said he wouldn't draw his sword. All he would do is defend. Cyan thanked him and asked for just one more thing. Not to tell his father anything that happened during their training. That was an order. Yukin hesitated, not understanding why Cyan made that request. Then suddenly, Cyan charged at him. Yukin was barely able to block the first. He attacked, but was left in disbelief at the strength of a mere 10-year-old boy. He realized that Cyan's movements were so fast, he had completely disappeared from sight. Cyan was already above him before he even noticed. While wondering where the kid had gone, he felt something and turned to block the attack. Kanan continued to strike without pause, but after several blows, he gave up, saying that unfortunately, he still couldn't beat him. However, he told Yukin that he did a great job, and thanked him for his help. Almost exhausted, Yukin replied that Cyan had done an excellent job, still unable to believe that such a skinny boy could be so powerful. If what he felt that day was true, the current young master would be able to pass any test thrown his way. The hellhound stood face to face with Cyan and charged. Cyan remained calm as he saw the beast come in for a bite. Something flashed past the hellhound's eye, and it collapsed on the ground far away. Looking back, Cyan said that with his current strength, he needed to finish this quickly. The hellhound got up and decided he had to end this in one strike. He prepared for the attack, and suddenly, the slash had already landed on the hellhound's head. He leapt and drove the sword right into its cerebellum. The knights present were all stunned, while his father gave a small smile. Looking at the carcass on the ground, Lucien said it was a shame, so much blood had gone to waste. But he knew, if he started drinking it, people would think he was crazy, so he let it go. Wawiz then approached and congratulated Cyan, saying it was incredible. Given how things turned out, he said they would surely meet again on the front lines. Cyan thanked his father. Meanwhile, Kiran called out to him, asking if she was just some kitchen knife.
Our boy replied no, she's a demonic blade. Then she asked why she wasn't being used.
She could only regain her powers by consuming blood. As they walked toward the hellhound, she begged for just a little taste. Sanman told her not to worry, he would use her as much as she wanted. In the northern battlefield, ogres invaded, the alarm was sounded, and Walla ordered that none be left alive. The soldiers raised their swords and activated the Prison of Salvation. A massive shining cross appeared on the battlefield, and a magical circle formed under the feet of all the ogres. From the circles, cords of light emerged and bound them. With them immobilized, the soldiers seemed able to easily defeat them. One of the ogres screamed as a soldier approached. The soldier gripped his blade tightly, prepared to strike, and with a single blow, decapitated the monster. Nearby, Shemta and Emily watched the battle. Emily was terrified. She asked why he had brought her to a place like that. Strangely, Shem felt nostalgic being there. When asked him what he thought about being on the front lines, and Shem said he was a little nervous. His father warned him that death could come at any moment in that place, so he'd better not let his guard down. Shem smiled and said he would keep that in mind. On the front lines, death was a constant, with 3 or 4 battles happening each day. Strategically, the knights did their best to halt the demon army's advance. Cyan's tent was the farthest and safest one. The problem was that, since he was now being watched, he couldn't find a chance to feed Karen. While wondering if he'd have to wait until nightfall, he asked Emily what she was doing under the blanket. She was panicking, saying the Duke had warned that they could die at any moment. Shun replied, "Then pack your things and leave." But she screamed, saying it was impossible. He couldn't be left alone. There were demon monsters everywhere. If she fled, who would take care of him? Suddenly, she left the tent, saying she was going to get something to eat. Seking tried to ask her about the cloak he had requested, but she ignored him. He was annoyed, because that damned girl never obeyed him. Later, he placed a dummy in his bed, thinking maybe it would be enough. When Emily asked if he was really going to stay in a place like that, She told him he was very diligent. If the Duke found out, he'd be proud. Shiming ignored her and said he was leaving. She could sleep there peacefully. He looked back and warned her to say he was sleeping if anyone asked. She agreed. At that moment, they needed every soldier possible on the front lines, so it was only now that Cyan could move freely. He activated an ability that allowed him to glide through the mist and headed toward a dangerous region, where he found a pack of hellhounds. But he was excited. This was the perfect place to test Kirin. As soon as she was summoned, she smelled the blood and told Cyan that she couldn't take it anymore. She needed to cut something. The hellhounds lunged at him, and Cyan told her to feed as much as she wanted. He began slaying the hounds, activating a skill called Furious Mist Storm. After finishing off a hellhound, he pulled blood from its head and took a huge gulp, wearing a crazed expression. He said, "That's what I'm talking about." Karen, thrilled and even tossing out little heart symbols, responded with excitement. They continued hunting, and Karen said those creatures were far too weak, but she told him not to worry. The night was still young, and there were plenty of monsters out there. Karen said she was excited. A carriage made its way along a mountain path, transporting a girl with white hair. Inside, someone warned that the place was very dangerous, and they should retreat. However, the girl replied not to treat her like a child. She was a princess of the empire, and it was her duty to help her family. If the woman said one more word, she'd take out her anger on her. The woman apologized immediately. The girl then mentioned that the young master of Duke Vert was also on the front lines, and was the same age as her. She asked if the Duke had the guts to bring his youngest son. Her companion replied no. In fact, the boy had volunteered. Since they were the same age, maybe they could become friends. But the princess said she wasn't interested, and that she was going to sleep. Her companion responded, "All right." As the princess got ready to sleep, she asked for his name. Her attendant answered, "Cyanvert? Cyanvert Vert." Under the light of the moon, she thought about that name. Meanwhile, harpies were being slain, and Alos was ordering his men to check on the wounded. On the battlefield, dozens of harpies and griffins lay dead, and the knights were preparing to return to base. Alos looked to the side, and from atop a mark, someone drew a source. It was Cyan, who had participated in that battle. Alos wondered if he was adjusting well to life on the front lines. Cyan replied yes. He was learning a lot every day. His father said he had expected Cyan would want to go back home, but he had stayed there for quite some time already. He told Cyan he was very proud of him. Those words left Cyan in disbelief. His father walked away, saying they had something to talk about in the morning. Lucien agreed, saying it was the first time he had seen their father with such a proud expression. That same night, Cyan went out hunting again. What he found was a deathworm, a creature that usually hid deep in the valleys. Karen told him he looked exhausted, and asked why he wouldn't let her take over his body. Cyan replied that she was being too obvious, but Karen insisted, saying the deathworm's flesh regenerated faster than he could damage it. As much as he didn't want to admit it, he knew it was true. He had been there for over a month, drinking the blood of countless demonic creatures every day, so why wasn't it enough? The worm attacked him again, and he said he didn't stand a chance like that, so he agreed to play by Karen's rules for a while. Karen gleefully said it was time to go crazy and activated the 9th assassination technique, the manifestation of the demonic blade. Numerous slashes appeared around the worm, as Shaz stood there with a darkened face. The creature writhed in agony, and our hero said he would cut it into pieces. He leaped into the air, and activated the 8 petals fluttering technique, striking the worm with countless slashes from top to bottom. The worm's mouth exploded, as our hero, now fully demonic, finished it off. Meanwhile, one of the knights touched the blood of a hellhound and noted it hadn't died long ago. It was Yukin and Wallace examining the area. They said it looked like the work of a demonic tribe. But upon inspecting the body, Wallace said those cuts looked oddly familiar. It felt like déjà vu. Yukin appeared from behind a rock and told them he had something to show them. Wallace asked what it was. When Yukin raised the torch, it revealed the death worm cut in half, leaving Wallace stunned. He couldn't believe that that organization was behind it. The manifestation of the demonic blade had taken over Xian's body, allowing Karen to use her full power. However, if he got distracted, his mind would be completely consumed as well. The next day he woke up saying he must be insane for using that kind of power just to kill a simple demonic beast. He got out of bed saying he was lucky to have drunk so much blood, otherwise his body would have been destroyed. Suddenly, Karen said she understood now. He looked like a 10-year-old boy, but he didn't talk or act like one. Not to mention, it was the first time he used her, yet he seemed way too familiar. He knew the geography of the valley too well and fought like someone who had mastered the mist technique for over 30 years. Karen remembered that he once said he had died before, and now she was certain. He was a regressor, wasn't he? Cyan replied that he had explained it already, but apparently she didn't understand. The poor girl bugged out, yelling at him, saying how was she supposed to understand something that's serious when he said it so casually. Cyan said that explaining things was boring. She replied that from watching the way he fought, defeating him shouldn't have been easy. If he had the demonic blade, he must have lost to the wielder of Duran Dark, which meant either he lost a duel, or he was betrayed. Recalling the expression on his face when he saw the sacred sword, she was sure he had been betrayed. She warned him, if he had returned to prepare for revenge, he'd better remember something. If she caught him being lazy, or weak for even 1 second, she would devour him on the spot. Cyan punched himself. Everything was chaos outside his tent. Emily ran up to him, wide-eyed. Something happened, she panted. Cyan frowned. What is it? She swallowed. They found the body of a demon, a death worm at the valley's entrance. His heart skipped. You're not saying it's the one I killed? Emily shook her head. It's been ages since anyone saw a beast that powerful so close to the border. Cyan pressed on. Anything else? Any rumors? Before she could answer, a knight appeared behind him and called his name. Young Master Cyan, the Duke wishes to speak with you. He stiffened. This wasn't good. The Duke's group had shown up yesterday while he was out hunting. He'd abandoned the hellhound carcass without cleaning it up, hoping to avoid notice before entering the academy. Now there was nowhere to hide. He saluted and entered his father's tent, certain the Duke already knew everything. His father greeted him coolly and said, "Sit." Shen obeyed, steeling himself for what was coming. "Let's be direct," the Duke began. "What were you doing out here last night?" Lucien's pulse raced. He forced himself to smile. "I went to bed early, father." For a moment the Duke seemed to believe him. Then his eyes narrowed. "Strange," he muttered. "The cuts on that wolf carcass matched your blade precisely." He looked at Cyan. "Am I rushing to judgment?" Shen opened his mouth, but the Duke held up a hand. "Something is wrong. Last night's incident we're still investigating, but it appears linked to the Mist organization." "The Mist?" Shen's blood ran cold. "An ancient sect," his father explained, "with unclear motives. They once massacred noble houses, under the guise of purification. Then they vanished, 300 years ago. Yet the same mist was present on that death worm's body, and that residue of power is only left by those who worship the god of mist. In my estimation, whoever killed that worm belongs to the mist." Suming's jaw dropped. "You traced a 300-year-old group from nothing but a footprint?" "I don't know why they disappeared," the Duke said, "but be cautious. I will report this to the Empire." Lucien relaxed. It looked like his father would drop his suspicion. The Duke waved his hand. "Enough. Have you heard about today's visitor?" "I heard it's someone of the royal family," Shen said. "Correct," the Duke said with a small smile. "I'd like a favor." Cyan's heart lurched. "What favor?" A herald sounded a trumpet. "His Majesty, the Emperor approaches." Everyone in the camp bowed, as a pale regal figure disembarked from his carriage. The Emperor, looking like a noble vampire, stepped forward. "No need for formalities, old friend," he told Lucien. Then he turned to Cyan. "Is this your son?" Cyan bowed. "Youngest of House Vert, at your service." The Emperor's eyes glowed with approval. "Remarkable to see your boy on the front lines. Your children are extraordinary." Lucien clapped Cyan on the shoulder. "Present him as my son," he whispered later. In the past life Cyan had always hidden in the shadows. No one even knew he existed. The Emperor smiled. "Perfect time then, to introduce another," he gestured, and a princess stepped forward, white-haired, poised. "I am Princess Aranciris, 5th Princess of the Empire." Shen's breath caught. He remembered her as the unfortunate princess in the Academy's records. One of the Duke's requests was that he escort her. Shen was baffled. He wasn't exactly skilled in courtly etiquette. But the Duke explained, "You'll be the same age in the Academy. Better to travel together." Suming recalled seeing her once before, changing classes. The Emperor added, "It's always good to know someone from the royal family. Even if she won't stay long, this is a valuable connection." Simon wasn't thrilled, but he saw his father's intent. He wanted them to form a bond, as Lucien and the Emperor had. Simon exhaled. "Father, you've chosen poorly. That girl isn't suitable for such closeness." Lucien sighed. "I can't reveal why. I know the future. For now, you'll follow these orders." As the troops marched, Aranciris glanced at a crimson lake. "Why is the lake red?" Cyan explained. "It's called the Blood Lake. Wounded creatures bathe in it to restore their mana, hence the color." She peered down at the floating carcasses. "So it's red because of monster remains?" "Essentially," he said. She nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you for explaining, Cyan Vert." He merely smiled and walked on, knowing his father's plans were far from over. At the end of the path, Erin asked what lay beyond. Shen replied that there was a demon kingdom. She asked, "Is there a demon king there?" Shen said yes. If she kept going, she might even meet him herself. In truth, he was just teasing her. It was a silly question. Suddenly, a flash of light streaked across the sky, a yellow mist cutting through the clouds. Ervans gasped. "What is that?" Sunjui's eyes narrowed. A golden light usually means demonic creatures are entering. She panicked. "They've already arrived?" The Duke gave immediate orders to protect His Majesty and began moving the group toward the third outpost. The Emperor looked disappointed. Wallace, the Duke, wondered what he meant. The Emperor then drew his sword. "I'm not here just for a visit. I was bored," he said with a grin. Wallace bowed his head. "Understood." The Emperor announced to his men that they would assist the eradication squad in fighting the creatures. Wallace then called Cyan over. He responded immediately. Aaron was confused. "Wait, are you really going to fight those monsters?" Cyan nodded. "I may be in the background, but I always fight on the front lines." She shouted that she wanted to go with him. Shen thought, "What is she doing?" She insisted that they were the same age, so it should be fine. But Cyan warned her. "This is a battlefield, not a playground." Still, she kept insisting. Taming finally called out to Yukin, who appeared behind her and told her he would escort her to the safest area. She turned, startled. "Who are you?" "Come with me, princess," he said calmly. She yelled at Cyan, calling him insolent for treating an imperial princess like this. But Cyan snapped back. "Every second you waste here will lead to more deaths on the front lines. Are you ready to take responsibility for that?" At that she began to cry. Still just a child in the end. Shimian turned away. "Go. Stop acting like a spoiled brat." The three stood there in silence. On the battlefield, soldiers were being devoured by what appeared to be demonic slugs. Wallace raised his sword and shouted for the troops to return to formation. He pointed and ordered them to protect the Emperor and eliminate all nearby creatures. With a war cry, the soldiers charged into battle. Suf of House Severos had two wives. The first, named Anna, who had passed away, and the second, Cassandra, who was the current ruler of the empire. The first wife bore him two children, and the second also bore two. However, the fifth princess was born to a commoner woman, which led to widespread disdain. Despite this, she never submitted to anyone. As a member of the royal family, she fulfilled all her duties and studied harder than anyone else. Still, many nobles were against her. Through false accusations, they exiled her from the imperial palace and sent her to an isolated place. That's how she became known as the unfortunate princess. Shen recalled that he had heard about this from his father in his past life. He murmured, "Politics and royal life are always like this." Meanwhile, the electric slugs were being slaughtered on the battlefield. Watching the explosions from afar, Shinrain was awed. The Emperor truly was incredible. The Emperor drove his sword into the ground and activated a sacred lightning spell, easily destroying all the slugs around him. Shin had heard that the Emperor's magic had reached 8 stars. If he hadn't become Emperor, he would have been the president of the Magic Council. Clearly, these mid-tier monsters were nothing to him. Later, Wallace and the Emperor shared drinks, reminiscing about old times. The Emperor spoke about the Empire's current state. Recently, assassinations of nobles had increased, causing growing unrest. Wallace guessed that this must be connected somehow. The Emperor revealed that all the assassinated nobles had been known as corrupt officials and a black mist had been found at each crime scene. "Do you know anything about this?" he asked. Wallace said it looked like the followers of the Black Mist had resumed their activity, since he had also found traces near their base. The Emperor agreed that it might be the case, but they would need to investigate further. He admitted that part of him wanted to thank whoever was getting rid of that trash, but the rising tension in the Empire was dangerous. Then he shared something that had particularly caught his attention. One noble had claimed that the fifth princess was involved in these incidents. Wallace was surprised. "People are trying to pin this on her." The Emperor nodded. "I know it's nonsense to blame a child, but if I die, Wallace, please take care of my daughter." Wallace swore an oath to do so. The Emperor thanked him. That night, rain fell over the tents. Emily asked Cyan if he really said all those things to the princess. He ignored her and said he was going out. She pressed, saying if he kept acting like that he'd never get married and would live a lonely life. Cyan brushed it off. "Forget it, I'm going to train." She asked if he was really going out in the rain. He told her not to worry, and just get some sleep. But clearly, Erin had overheard everything from nearby. Erin was startled and asked who she was. She lowered her hood and asked if he was heading somewhere. However, if he wasn't busy, she wanted to talk about something. When Emily saw the princess there, her eyes lit up with excitement. Erin asked how long they had been there, and Sean replied that it had been over a month. But he wanted to know why she was there. She hesitated, staying silent, and both Emily and Sean asked to be left alone, clearly annoyed by her sudden appearance. Everyone left, telling them to enjoy their little tent moment. Sean knew he was 40 years old and had absolutely no interest in her. Erin apologized for what happened that morning. Awkwardly, Lucien admitted that he had also acted wrongly. She laughed, saying she would have done the same thing. She said she knew he was respected by those around him, unlike her. Sean hadn't expected her to have that kind of personality. She said she knew he was heading to the academy and that she wanted to be friends with him. However, Sean politely apologized and said that, unfortunately, he couldn't help her. If she had come to get closer to him, it was better for her to leave. She lowered her head, saying she only said that to break the ice, but he was cruel. Does he think I'm only a princess by name? She thought. Actually, that is how things work, isn't it? Sean remained silent. Tearing up, she said that now she understood his perspective. There was nothing for him to gain by being close to her, and she apologized for wasting his time. Maybe she made a mistake thinking they could talk. He was completely different from Lord Achel. Hearing that name shocked Sean. He turned around and grabbed her arm. She told him to let go and asked why he was acting that way. Sean asked her how she knew his older brother. She said she met him during a visit to the academy last year, and he had told her to keep being a strong princess. Sean knew his brother well. It didn't make sense for him to give advice like that. That must have been the start of his manipulation. A plan to bring down Princess Arin. Sean said he was going to give her some advice. But suddenly the tent began to shake. Emily burst in, yelling for them to run. But a pillar was already about to crush them. An explosion followed, and Emily was thrown from the tent. From a distance, everyone saw a giant ogre and realized that was the young master's tent. Emily, crying, feared for the worst. As the ogre raised its club, the emperor asked what was happening, and the knight reported that the princess's tent had been attacked by a high-level creature. The emperor immediately ordered all frontline troops to assist her and demanded to know who she had gone to meet in such a dangerous place. The giant ogre continued destroying the rear section of the base. Hidden nearby, Sean was stunned. There shouldn't be ogres in that region. They only appear in the depths of the valley. He wondered if this was somehow his fault when Emily called his name. He turned and saw her crying, saying she thought he was dead. He remembered the moment of impact. He had managed to grab Urain and dodge the blow just in time. Of course, someone capable of challenging the Demon King's army wouldn't die to a mere troll. Urain asked if the knights would be okay. Emily reassured her. They were strong. Still crying, she said that if she hadn't been there, none of this would have happened. It was all her fault. The knights said it was all right. Their duty was to protect them. Smiling, one said she could trust them to give their lives if necessary. But just then, a knight shouted a warning. A giant ogre hand was swinging down behind them. The poor man was crushed. Blood splattered as the ogre lifted its red-stained club. Sean told the princess to get behind him. The ogre seemed to sniff the air. Sean realized that, just as he suspected, these monsters were after him. He tried to tell Emily to take the princess and run, but before he could finish, Emily had already grabbed Aaron and dashed away. "Damn it," he muttered. "She's fast, especially when running." The ogre charged to crush him. Sean couldn't use the demon blade. It would expose him. He was still puzzled. Why were these creatures hunting him? What was this smell they were sensing? Karen's voice echoed in his mind. To get stronger, you drank the blood of many demonic creatures. Now, to monsters you smell like a feast. They're drawn to you. Sean was furious. That damned woman knew and didn't tell me. She laughed in his head. Did you forget? The only thing I want is your body. Sean grabbed her presence and turned it into a dagger. What are you doing? She asked, mockingly. Sean realized he had no choice. He had to go all in. He charged forward, shouting that he didn't care anymore. The ogre swung its fist. With sharp movement, Sean sliced off its arm, then dashed behind it, slashing at its neck. With just 2 strikes the beast collapsed. Now, he muttered, just need to deal with the witnesses. In front of him stood a crowd of creatures. Karen chuckled. You're a little too excited for this festival. Sean froze. A demonic dragon had just appeared. The dragon roared to the heavens. Karen said calmly, don't be afraid. He was still just a little cub. Sean immediately activated the manifestation of the demon blade. He pointed the dagger and said he needed to eat him. Meanwhile, the army was fighting off the ogres that had invaded the base. The Emperor and Wallace had just killed the last one, and the Emperor asked if there was any trace of the princess. Wallace apologized, saying young Master Sean was in danger because of her. The Emperor told her to calm down and explain properly. He then asked Emily if she was Sean's servant, and she confirmed. So he ordered her to explain what had happened. Trembling, Emily explained that Sean had drawn the attention of the creatures so the princess could escape. The Emperor said nothing. One of the knights said he remembered the location. If they gave the command, they could go rescue him. The Emperor yelled at Wallace, demanding to know why he hadn't given the order yet. Wallace said they weren't going. Both the Emperor and Aaron were shocked and asked what he meant. Wallace said the recovery of Her Highness was the priority. If that place fell, demonic beasts would invade the entire empire. They needed to rebuild the base first. That was the only way to prevent further losses. Emily then asked what they were going to do about the young master. Wallace said the boy had already fulfilled his duty by evacuating the princess. That's how things worked in House Verte. The Emperor and Aaron watched him speak while Aaron thought to herself, "Once again, it's all my fault." Suddenly, they heard a roar in the sky. When Aaron looked up, the dragon was flying overhead, and she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The boy was hanging from its tail, being carried away. In this world, dragons are the creatures closest to the gods and are considered the most evolved form of life. Normally, meeting such a noble creature would be an honor, so why was it flying so close to these people? Aaron screamed his name, and the Emperor asked Wallace what his son was doing up there. Wallace stood silently. The Emperor demanded to know why he wasn't doing anything. Meanwhile, up above, Sean didn't know what to do. He had just wanted to drink a little demon blood, but things had gotten complicated. As soon as the dragon appeared, he challenged it. A swarm of weaker monsters had attacked him, so he used the Furious Mist ability to wipe out the battlefield. Then he approached the dragon and realized it wasn't fully grown yet. But the dragon prepared an attack. Sean was in shock. An explosion followed, as a laser sliced through the entire battlefield. He managed to dodge next to the dragon's head, and muttered that it was just a kid. "How dare you spit at me the first time we meet," he yelled, slashing its eye. But now, suspended in midair, the dragon struck back. Just as the blow was about to pierce him, Sean smiled and activated the mist blade, using the 8 fluttering petals to slash the dragon from all directions. The beast crashed to the ground with a massive explosion, and Sean realized just how impossible it was to kill a dragon. His shoulders were already worn out. But now that it was on the ground, it was time for the final blow. However, the dragon beat its wings to create distance. Sean knew it was going to fire the laser again, but when he looked, the dragon was fleeing, terrified, flying off in panic. Sean launched himself at it, yelling, "You're not running away, you bastard." That's how he ended up hanging from the dragon. The problem was, when he looked down, everyone was watching him. Now how was he going to explain this? Karen asked why he was frozen like a statue, and he replied, "Can't you see everyone down there?" "No, girl." Karen was furious, saying she would have to use her powers after being summoned. But Sean said if he did anything demonic here, he'd end up on a stake. She screamed, "Then what are you gonna do, you little bastard?" He shouted back, "I'm thinking, shut up." Down below, Wallace finally began to chant a light spell. Sean instantly recognized it, an 8-star attack. He couldn't believe his father was about to fire that at his own son. And that's exactly what he did, raising his sword to the sky. Lucian was panicking. What kind of father is this? The dragon, however, swooped down toward the magic and began dodging everything. Sean muttered, "Good job, well done, buddy, but don't relax yet." The real problem appeared from behind. He saw it coming, it was right in front of him. There was no way to dodge. The blast struck the leg he was holding on with, and Sean fell. He was sad, thinking he had lost his lunchbox. While Kieran shouted at him to protect himself, he was going to fall head first. He insisted he couldn't use any mist techniques. She yelled in his face to stop being so cautious. He was going to die like this. He told her to shut up, he was thinking. Until suddenly, he had an idea. Honestly, he's really not going to die, and she's in disbelief that he's about to throw himself into that. Down below is the Red River. He says he doesn't have a choice. He already fell into the Tawish River once. Man, this must be the same thing. Someone from afar watches the fleeing dragon and says it's rare to witness a sight like this. The guy behind him replies it's probably just a young man who got separated from his group. The silver-haired guy points in a direction and asks if there are demons over there, but his friend replies that it's actually the human region. He looks toward the horizon, curious, and says dragons shouldn't be defeated by humans. He goes quiet for a second, and the guy with glasses asks if something happened. He points ahead and says he's feeling a strange, almost familiar energy coming from that direction. His friend says they can go check it out, but warns him that he's forbidden from annihilating everything just out of boredom. He spreads his wings and says, "Alright, I won't cause any problems," then flies off saying he'll be right back. Meanwhile, Sean is crawling out of the blood lake. He throws himself onto a nearby rock, cursing up to the 10th generation. This one really wasn't easy for him to wake up and pay attention. They're in the demon realm now. Sean tells her not to worry, it's very rare to encounter a high-level demon in this area. Then, from behind, a voice says, they knew they'd find something interesting. Sean is startled. That's a voice he'd never forget. The demon behind him asks if he's human, and Sean immediately knows it's the Demon King Valkyrian. He remembers that, in the past, this guy said the exact same thing, that Sean was like evil condensed into a single person. Valkyrian asks why he's not answering. Aren't you human? And in a flash, he's suddenly behind Sean, asking if he really wants to pick a fight. Sean flinches and turns around swinging, but Valkyrian easily dodges, although a tiny strand of his hair is cut. He's impressed, saying that indeed, the races hold infinite potential. Kairon asks who that is, and the protagonist replies, the Demon King. She immediately says, if he's the Demon King, you think you're going to win? He knows that it's impossible. The best option is to run away, but his hand is trembling. He wonders if escaping is even possible, but is caught off guard when the demon lies down and tells him to relax. He's confused. Did this guy really come here to fight a kid? Valkyrian lays down saying, you really think I came here just to beat up a child? Sean is totally messed up, wondering why this lunatic is lying on the ground. Valkyrian asks again, are you human? Sean says yes. Valkyrian doesn't even seem curious how he got there. Sean explains he was carried by the river. Valkyrian figures this must be his first time in the demon realm. Then he mentions he sensed a strange energy and asks Sean what he is. Sean says he's just a normal human. Valkyrian replies that he says that, but he seems to know exactly who he is. Sean admits that makes sense. It's not the first time they've met. Valkyrian stretches and says, maybe, though it's the first time he's seen the human. The boy asks why he came here, still wondering why this guy is so relaxed. Valkyrian says he felt a strange energy, while out on a stroll. Sean is confused. The Demon King goes on walks? Valkyrian confirms. Of course. As the Demon King, he needs to keep an eye on the lands he rules. He stands up and asks, boy, what did I just say? Sean repeats, the Demon King needs to keep an eye on the lands he rules. Valkyrian points at him and says, you're not even surprised, huh? He suddenly starts yelling, are you sure you've never been seen before? What kind of kid reacts like this? Sean knows that the invasion of the demon realm is about to begin, but this guy is completely different from the one he once knew. What could have happened to change his attitude so drastically? Kairon asks, so, as Demon King, what does he want to do? Valkyrian smiles, saying it's bold to ask such a thing to the Demon King. But he adds, isn't it obvious? As long as my subordinates are alive and fed, there's nothing else I need to do. But everything changes if someone tries to mess with that. In that case, he'll wipe everyone out. That is his simple duty as Demon King. For a second, Sean felt the same demonic aura as the one who first attacked the Empire. Somehow, he has to prevent that from happening. He then asks Valkyrian if he wants to make a deal. Valkyrian asks, what kind? Sean says that something will happen to him in the future, an incident that will put all of his subordinates at risk. Valkyrian tells him to explain this nonsense. Sean says he doesn't know exactly how it'll happen, but it'll be an incident that becomes the catalyst for a war against humanity. Valkyrian crosses his arms and asks if Sean really believes that he, the Demon King, would attack the human lands. Sean says that's exactly why. He wants to make a pact that, no matter what happens, at the very least, a war won't start. Valkyrian says he has no idea what he's talking about, but let's pretend he accepted it. So what does he gain from this? Sean says that no matter what happens, he will help the Demon King, who approaches and says that Sean apparently knows something. Sean is sweating, and Valkyrian asks what his name is. He says he will keep this promise, as the Demon King. He flies away saying that Sean better keep his promise too, since this is a pact. He smiles, saying it's sealed now. After contacting the Demon King, some knights found Sean. Seeing him coming out of the Red Lake, they said it was a miracle he was still alive. Because of that, he received the title, the one who survived the demon dragon. He was then taken to a monastery on the front lines, a place used as a military hospital. Sean asks someone to repeat what they just said. Ariane is hesitant to say anything. She holds herself back and suddenly yells, asking if he wants to be hers. The poor guy is confused, not understanding what she means by that, but he says he's not interested. She, obviously, is shocked. She starts crying again, saying it was expected, right? After all, she's the fifth princess with no power at all. Sean is lying in bed, thinking she's already managing to annoy him. He knows that Princess Aranim is the weak link in the imperial family, and the way she's risking herself, her end is obvious. The problem is that he can't get the idea out of his head that his damn brother is behind her death. He then says, she's right. Currently she really doesn't offer him any benefit. She has no possessions. He takes a hit. On top of that, getting involved with her politically is extremely risky. He takes another hit. However, he says he'll take care of her until she resolves what needs to be resolved. She asks if he's really going to do that. Sean says yes, it's a promise, so she doesn't need to worry. She stands up, saying she understands. When she becomes someone, it means he acknowledged her power. She points at him saying she doesn't know when, but she will make him recognize her power. Sean sits there, anxious, thinking, what a mess. She was depressed just a second ago. Before leaving, she says there's one more thing. She thanks him for surviving, then she walks away, and Sean stays there, silent. At the edge of the camp, in a forest nearby, a hooded man looks around. He takes a cube in his hand and smiles, saying that it's almost time. However, a voice calls out to him, Reinhold Crimson. So it was you. He can't move his body, as if he were trapped by invisible chains. Someone behind him says that this is a small dimensional box, and based on the timeline, it was created before it was ever commercialized. This box can store anything, as long as the person desires it. From the shadows, Sean speaks, saying that this is the masterpiece that created the Magic Council. He had observed the guy for an entire year, smuggling things out of the Empire. He pulls the box, saying he's taking it now. 7-star Magic Knight, Reynold Crimson, Sean says. Reynold asks who he is, and in that moment, recognizes him as Cyan Vert. Sean throws the box's contents on the ground while Reynold demands to know how he found out about this. Sean ignores the question, saying Reynold must have an informant to know the exact timing and place. Reynold keeps insisting he has no idea what Sean is talking about, but Sean says there's no way he can lie. After all, the blood of these creatures is already being sold in the Empire. That's how Ash sent him that gift, containing hellhound blood. The man is sweating, wondering who informed this kid, and what the hell is going on. He has no idea how Sean trapped him, but if he moves slowly, he stretches out his hand, uses a fire spell and yells for Sean to die. A blast surges toward him. After attacking, Reynold says, good thing I took this seriously. Can't underestimate the son of Shirit. Seeing that nothing is in front of him, he finally relaxes, only for his hand to be suddenly cut off. He screams in pain and can't understand what that mist in front of him is. Upon seeing Sean, he mutters that he must be part of the mist, but Sean grabs him by the neck and slams him against a tree. Sean gives him two options. Either you confess and die peacefully, or you don't, and die in pain. In the western supply zone of the camp, some people are organizing boxes. They see 2 crates of potions, and are excited. It'll be enough to carry even more. One of them is just curious to know what's inside the biggest crate. However, upon opening it, they both gasp in shock. It's just the head of Reynold from the mountain. Tangoran asks if he's really going to let the others live. Sean says yes, this is enough. As a warning, that guy had been smuggling demon items into the Empire. Those items would end up in the Magic Council, a place where people would do anything, any kind of madness to understand magic. He says what they're going to do with demon blood is unthinkable, so they need to be separated. Kieran says that in this new life he's only living for others, but he replies that he's just preventing other people from using demon blood. Meanwhile, in a certain mansion in Inverse, Ale receives a letter and discovers that Cyan has just gone to the front lines with his father. He has a close female friend lying on his bed. That shameless villain sure knows how to enjoy life. She asks if that's not the younger brother from another mother. Eshel says yes, and mentions that the boy is a problem in many ways, so he's going to have to go pay him a visit. Kids, do you remember how the last chapter ended? With his brother saying he was going to go check on Cyan. Some bags are being stacked, and Emily celebrates that they're finally off the front lines. She's sure the academy will be much calmer than this terrifying place. Meanwhile, Cyan knows a new kind of hell is just beginning. The academy isn't the dreamland Emily imagined. In reality, it's a cruel place where lives are destroyed for political interests. A place dominated by envy and greed, where oddly, academics aren't even the priority. But Emily keeps dreaming, saying she'll find a chatty instructor. Sean starts realizing that she'll be following him around the academy. Some time later, he's back in the Duchy of Vart. He hears a sound and looks to the side. It's Krant, startled and trembling, asking what he's doing there. Sean tries to say hi, but the boy already runs off. Air asks who that idiot was. Sean says it's that cramped guy, but tells her not to worry about him. Kiran says his brother is the complete opposite of him. Sean replies that it makes no sense. His opposite is someone else entirely. The door opens, and he's back at the mansion. But this time, all the butlers greet him. Sean remembers how they didn't even look at him before, but now they're showing this superficial courtesy, probably something his father arranged. His hard work really did change a lot over the past year. He puts his hand on the doorknob, but just as he's about to open it, he senses a familiar energy and says he knows exactly who it is. For something to make him tremble with rage like this, it can only mean one thing. Behind that door is that bastard. Eshel says it's been a long time since they've seen each other, while all Sean can think is that he needs to stay calm. Since Sean doesn't say anything, Eshel asks if he's forgotten his brother. What Sean is really doing is trying hard to stay calm. Eshel comments that maybe Sean forgot him since the last time they saw each other was before Sean left for the academy. But Xian's eyes are already red. He's realizing he won't be able to keep calm. Already reaching for his dagger, he's certain he's going to kill him now. However, Kiran grabs his wrist and warns him that if he doesn't want his skull smashed, he better stay in control. Besides, killing him now wouldn't be any fun. With that, Sean calms down and offers a formal greeting to his older brother. Ishal asks, "So you do remember me, or is it impossible to forget your brother's face?" Eel then pats him on the head, saying he's very happy. He was worried his little brother wouldn't remember him. What a relief. He even heard that his little brother's swordsmanship has drastically improved, and that soon, he'll be helping House Vert, or better yet, helping him on the battlefield. Sean says that's true, and that he's very excited to fight alongside his brother. Ishal stares at him and says he's relieved to hear that, since the only reason he came here was to find him. Sean knows that Ishal is the type of person who completely ignores people he finds useless. Now that he realizes his brother is only here out of interest, to use him, he relaxes and says he also wanted to see his brother again. Meanwhile, Emily is dragging their bags, completely exhausted. She drops them in the hallway, saying it was way too hard. She shouts at the door, asking how he had the nerve to leave everything to her. Suddenly, Eshel Saab appears in front of her. He smiles and says he heard they're very close, and he wants her to keep working hard for Siam. He walks away while both she and Sean thank him. Then she screams at Sean, saying she almost died of fright. Why didn't he warn her that Eel was here? Sian ignores her and tells her to leave for a moment. She asks why. Coldly he looks at her and says, "It won't happen again." She's startled by his expression. Sian goes into the bathroom and begins vomiting into the toilet. Dizzy, he asks Kiran why she stopped him. She answers that he should be thanking her. He says it was the perfect chance. If he had lost, she could have taken over his body. Ariam says he doesn't understand. The more hatred he feels, the better it is for her. He smirks, saying that's exactly who she is. Meanwhile, someone goes to Exel's door and asks to enter. Exel tells him to come in. The man informs him that he has confirmed the location of the second young lady. Exel asks where, and the man confirms she is currently residing in the northern continent, in the land of the elves, in Proena. Ia smiles and says it's amazing how she can get along even with a race that hates foreigners. That's a testament to her natural affinity. He then asks to be notified if she shows any sign of returning to the Empire. The man asks if something happened that changed Ekel's mood. He asks why he thinks that. The man explains that he seems to have a much more radiant aura. Was meeting his younger brother really that incredible? Eshel says, it was terrible. Maybe that's one way to put it, but at this moment, he's actually pretty pissed off. The poor servant is trembling. Apologizing. Eshel paid very close attention to Xian's gaze and interpreted it as the look of someone who just saw his enemy. Did he see something wrong? He knows there's something strange about that boy, and he'll need to watch him closely. The butler says he understands and says he'll assign someone to keep an eye on him. Eshel stands still, staring out the window, remembering Xian's look, wondering what he's hiding. Outside the mansion, carriages gather. Emily is yelling that she's very disappointed in the young master. He says it's her fault he can't go, since she's not suited to be a guard. She gets angry, saying he should have warned her earlier. The carriage starts to move, and Sean waves goodbye to her, telling her to stay calm, while she shouts at him not to cry just because she's not there. Sean makes a goofy face and says he understands, while Emily is shocked he's actually leaving like that. She starts yelling, saying that even if he's bullied or beaten up by everyone, he shouldn't lose hope. From afar, she shouts for him to come back safely. Sean remembers that when he was 8 years old, he got a high fever that caused him to faint. Back then, no one else took care of him. Only Emily carried him on her back. Even in the rain, she was the only one in the family who tried to find a doctor to help him. After a long search, an old man opened the door. If it weren't for her that day, he probably would have been found dead in one of the mansion's rooms. With a bright smile, he says that if she keeps following him like this, she'll end up dead, and he can't take her to the academy, because to him she's too precious. Now he's alone in the carriage, but he's surprised that they assigned 6 intermediate-level knights just to escort the young master to the academy. He's pretty sure he'll see blood before even arriving. It was already late afternoon. The knights looked at each other and decided to stop there. They informed Cyan, who asked how far they still were. They told him they were near the central city of Saffron and would likely arrive there by morning. Sean says he understands and asks them to call him once they finish setting up. But he already knows they're lying. After all, this forest isn't anywhere near Sauron. Camping in the middle of the day in an isolated place and lying about the location. Everything makes it clear they're planning something. Sean begins stepping out of the carriage when they tell him everything's ready. He walks out acting clueless, saying the air feels great. Already surrounded by the 6 knights, he wants to know whose orders they're following. One of them hesitates in the background. Sweat runs down all their faces, but no one speaks. One of them, however, has a faint smile. Sean notices and asks again whose orders they're acting on. That man starts drawing his sword, saying Sean doesn't need to know, since he'll be dead soon anyway. They step forward, apologizing, saying it's nothing personal, but out of respect, they'll make it as painful as possible. All he needs to do is close his eyes. A knight lunges, ready to deliver a death blow to Sean's neck, but before the blade lands, his head has already been sliced off. It falls to the ground like a sack of trash, and the others stare in disbelief. Sean says he'll ask one more time, whose orders? Now everyone's terrified, trembling, not knowing what to do. Sean asks why they're so frozen. Did they really think it would be that easy? One of the knights can't even believe what he's seeing. Another tries to attack Sean from behind. But in an instant, Sean is already on the other side, having delivered 2 clean slashes. Another takes a cut on the shoulder and one on the arm. One tries to run but immediately falls, writhing in agony. Sean had thrown Kira, his weapon, into his back. The knight, who was standing still in shock, is now crying, wondering how a child barely 11 years old could do something like this. Sean hadn't even moved far. And yet, everyone was already dead. Clearly, he didn't survive the demon dragon for nothing. Sending intermediate knights for this mission was a mistake. The crying man collapses to the ground. Sean approaches and tells him to say who gave the order. The man immediately confesses. It was all orchestrated by the Duchess, Margaret. Sean is caught off guard. He didn't even need to threaten the guy, he spilled everything on his own. The poor man is just there, trembling and crying. Why did he talk? Simple. The carriage is already on the move again, carrying Sean calmly toward. He tells Cyan that it seems this was all the doing of young Master Krantes. He somehow asked his mother to prevent Cyan from interfering with him at the academy. Apparently this entire mission was a result of that request. Cyan remembers that coward who always runs away, and now he's behind all this. He's definitely going to need to give him some help at the academy. The man then, a little awkwardly, asks what will happen to him now. Is he going to die too? Cyan says he doesn't seem very attached to his own life. The man replies that he knows they were trying to kill Cyan, so it doesn't make sense for him to be spared. Cyan tells him to at least drive the carriage properly then, so he can be useful alive. The man understands what he means and thanks Cyan, who replies, "Looks like we've arrived, huh?" In the central city of Saffron, a vase is smashed on the floor. Margarita demands to know how they found 6 dead bodies. The butler confirms that it's true, and says that young Master Cyan arrived in Saffron 10 days ago. Margarita, furious, says the butler had assured her there would be no problems, so what happened? The butler apologizes, saying they underestimated a child. She says it's impossible. A 10-year-old couldn't have killed that many people. The butler says he probably had help from someone they didn't know about. But it's fine. They'll just send an assassin to infiltrate the academy. She cuts him off, saying, that's enough. What if Cyan finds out she was behind it and ends up hurting Krantes because of it? She remembers Cyan asking whether her son needed to graduate. Biting her lip, she says it's best not to do anything else before things get worse. Also, no one can find out about this incident, so all those affiliated with it should be eliminated. Eshel's spy overheard the entire conversation. It's been 10 days since Cyan left Saffron. Brian has been playing the role of servant this whole time, and he knows that word of Cyan's survival must have reached the mansion by now. At this rate, he'll probably reach the academy without any further trouble. Cyan starts to wonder whether he'll have to get rid of Brian, Suddenly Brian opens the carriage window with a smile, announcing that they've arrived. Cyan says, "Alright, I got it." That city brings back memories. Not necessarily good ones, but this academy changed him a lot. At the reception, he shows the crest of House Frey. A bit hesitant, the receptionist girl says she'll register him. Everything looks in order. He'll get his room soon. And everything should be fine. Still, Cyan notices something strange about her behavior. Is there something wrong? She then hands him a letter and a golden key. He's shocked and asks if she gave him the right one. Brian drops the luggage, in surprise when he realizes what room Cyan has been assigned. The royal dormitory. The best available. However, Cyan remembers that in his past life, this never happened to anyone. That must mean someone's influence is behind this. He asks Brian if that was the last suitcase, and Brian says yes, he brought everything. Cyan puts his hand inside his coat and says that now that they've arrived at the academy and the luggage is delivered, Brian's job is done. Brian, sweating, says, "Hey, wait a minute, kid." But Cyan tosses him a bag of coins. Brian, surprised, asks, "What is this?" Cyan replies that it should be enough to start over, wherever he chooses to go. He just advises Brian not to return to the mansion, otherwise he'll die. Brian stands there in silence for a moment. Then suddenly, he kneels and says, "I, Brian Kendrick, official knight of Vadis, wish to serve young Master Cyan until the end of my life." Cyan asks if he's really a knight. Brian says yes, though he's not very good, so he's more of an assistant. But once his father told him that if a not-so-talented knight ever found someone he could truly trust, he should not hesitate to serve them. Cyan says that's idiotic. Brian, confused, asks what he means. Cyan asks if he isn't afraid of being betrayed later. Brian says that even if that happens, he doesn't mind. Cyan warns him not to do anything reckless. As they walk out the door, Cyan mentions there will be an entrance ceremony, and then they'll head straight to the exam. Brian, already sweating, says okay. Meanwhile, the academy's headmaster and a girl are talking. This year, there are many talented students. All the students are gathered in a room. In the center stands a girl surrounded by a powerful aura. She is Aaron Severa. She has a 2-star magic grade, a B-rated physique, and a 52% light element affinity. Another student named Shark is a 3-star mage, with a similar physique and a 71% earth element affinity. Stroking his beard, the old man says, "These kids are incredible, but then there's that boy, Severth. He has a 1-star magic grade, an S-rated physique, and a 92% dark element affinity." The academy instructor Sika Nigrit says that even the girl Elevert, once considered the daughter of God, only had an 88% water element affinity. The old man comments on how interesting it is that the person everyone believed had an unsurpassable talent has already been outshined by her own brother. He is the chancellor of the academy, Kendall Kizel. However, Sirika points out that his element is darkness, and the director agrees. Due to the nature of dark magic, there are indeed some people. They talk about how some people manifest and waste any talent they have. However, he tells her that Shimin received a royal dormitory. She says she heard about that from the other instructors, and he informs her it was an order from the emperor. Apparently, Cyan saved Princess Arin, who was with him on the front lines against some demonic beasts. The emperor even seems to be considering marriage. The 5th princess, excluded from the line of succession, is from the Vert family, long known as the cradle of talented warriors. The instructor asks what she thinks will happen, and Sirika responds that if this continues, it will only accelerate the revolts occurring throughout the empire, and might result in more blood being spilled. The director says that for now, all they can do is observe whether this child will become a hero or a disaster. Walking down the hallway, Cyan is thinking about his 92% dark element affinity. In his past life, it was only 80%. Could it be because of the demonic beast blood he drank? As he walks, he spots someone. It's Krantes, who jumps in surprise and stutters. "Cyan?" The chubby boy behind him asks if that's the kid who's been treating him like a slave. He looks at Cyan and asks if it's true that he doesn't even know who his mother is. Cyan recognizes this boy as the son of Marquis Popper, Peneron. In his past life, he also hung around Krante and tormented him. So, it's perfect to find them together like this. The chubby boy tells Krantes to step aside because that kid, Cyan, needs to be crushed. Krantes, sweating, says it's better not to do that, but he immediately gets kicked and thrown against the wall while screaming in despair. Cyan then asks Krantes if he doesn't want to have a little talk. Krantes, hesitantly, says yes. He's sweating like a marathon runner when Cyan puts a hand on his shoulder. Cyan tells him he doesn't mind him scheming behind his back, but if he finds out about one more plan, Crantes won't graduate with all 4 limbs. Crantes collapses to the ground in despair, and Cyan walks away, saying this academy is going to be a lot of fun. In one of the rooms, Surika is thinking about Cyan, saying she's going to have to pay close attention to that boy. She walks over and touches a book, wondering why it's not there. From behind her, Cyan asks if she's looking for this. She jumps in surprise but quickly turns around with a friendly face, asking how a student got into a restricted area. However, in her mind, she finds it strange. She couldn't sense his presence at all. She walks closer and asks if he's the boy called Cyan, right? Can he return that book? It's research material. Cyan says yes, of course he'll return it. However, instead of the book, he seems to hand her a single sheet of paper. When she thanks him, he immediately senses an aura. Books around the room begin to fly, and he asks if that wasn't what she was looking for. Instructor Surika, or rather the current leader of the Mist Assassins. Obviously, she wants to know how he found that out. Cyan remembers that in his past life he thought of her as just another regular instructor. She would ask how his life was at the academy, and he wouldn't say much. He used to attend counseling sessions with her. When she talked about his growth potential, he thought it was all a joke, and didn't care. But one day, Surika said she was interested in him. She found it fascinating that someone had an 84% affinity with the darkness element. Cyan replied that it's an element that doesn't always manifest, but Surika said it's just that humanity doesn't understand darkness yet. Unlike others, she believed his growth potential was infinite. That stirred Cyan's emotions. Surika said she wished him the best for his future, and he thought maybe she could guide him, or at least, that's what he believed at the time. He was completely deceived. The girl behind those glasses is very different from the academy instructor she pretends to be. She's the leader of the Mist Assassins, hiding within the academy where most of the continent's nobles gather. Suddenly, she says it's fine, she wants to hear the details in her lab, so he should follow her. Cyan is startled, she's calmer than he expected. Looking at her lab, he says, it seems just like he remembered. He's about to drink the coffee, when he pauses, realizing she probably poisoned it. Now it makes sense why she was so calm. She says he doesn't need to worry, it's just enough to melt a few organs. But Cyan, confident after eating so many demons and Emily's cooking, says he can digest anything. He even asks for something stronger next time. She says it's time they have a real conversation, and wants to know how he discovered her identity. Also, he knows the exact location of the commands hidden in the Academy's books that no one ever checks out. Does he want to reveal it before she finds out that he's part of the Mist too? But Cyan says there's no need for him to prove anything to her. She glares at him and says he's acting way too full of himself. Because he has a strong affinity with the element, Cyan tells her that, on his way here, everyone kept telling him he should have brought more than just one knight. That's because a lot of nobles have been dying recently. He asks her when she started the purification process. She gives a little smirk and repeats, purification process, already activating her aura, and says she has no idea what he's talking about. Cyan says he'll make it clearer. He's talking about the assassinations. Surika says he'll regret making those threats, and he asks if she's threatening a student. Suddenly she kicks the table and throws everything at him. He doesn't seem scared, asking if that's really how she's going to act. He punches the table, she's already behind him, dagger in hand. While he says he's already proven his identity, she lunges at him, saying that, as the leader of the organization, there's no way she wouldn't recognize one of the Mist. She tries to slash him, but Cyan dodges. She goes at him again, saying he's not going to escape this time. Cyan pulls out Kieran, thinking there's no other way, and blocks her attack. He says that if she won't believe him, he'll just have to show her, and begins to fight back. She's the one who has to defend and ends up retreating, sweating. She asks, is that blade what I think it is? The weapon that can only be wielded by those who've been chosen. The demonic blade of Kieran. Cyan asks if she's finally recognizing him. After all, right at this very moment, the Mist should already be working to locate her. Siri wants to know how he knows that. Cyan tells her that the heir she's been looking for is standing right in front of her. In a certain street in an isolated house, someone uses magic to unlock a door. It's Surika with Cyan, who comments that he doesn't seem very impressed with the Mist's hideout being right here. That path over there leads to the altar he's so eager for, so she tells him he can go alone. Cyan walks through the tunnels. It's a subspace created by the power of the god of Mist, which is why it's much longer than it appears. Still, he remembers exactly which direction to go and all the traps along the way. Suddenly, some people attack him from behind. He says this welcome ceremony is a bit too much. He defends a few strikes and retreats. They throw a mass of mud at him, which he has to block. One of them almost dies from it and has to defend himself too. Cyan is impressed that the guy managed to dodge that in such a short time. The attacker, thinking it's amazing, activates a secret technique that creates several clones attacking from all directions. But Shinan also has his own technique. The attackers seem to recognize it, and don't understand how a kid knows how to use it. Cyan unleashes the killing intent wave, a technique used only by those who have been assassins for a long time. It induces a deep fear in everyone nearby. The enemies can't even breathe, and collapse, unconscious. Cyan knows they won't be getting up for a while, but it's impressive that one of them is still standing. Is he some kind of executive? Cyan activates another ability, and the man charges at him. Cyan manages to defend the attack, but the man cancels his ability, a mask falls to the ground, and the person says she can't hold back anymore. Cyan stands there confused. It's Lady Surika again, saying she wants him to show his true power. He uses another technique, a wild attack that sends her flying. She says he's interesting, being able to use 2 assassination techniques so easily. She wanted to see his potential, but the boy is already running away. Cyan knows she has something called combat desire. Once absorbed by that urge, she'll keep fighting until one of them dies. He's experienced it before and knows he has to run, but she's excited, telling him to come back because he wants this too, doesn't he? She attacks him again, and he blocks it. She says that this is a subspace where no one will notice anything. He doesn't need to hold back. Cyan realizes there's no way out. He really will have to use every technique he knows. There's a risk she might die, but there's no other choice. Suddenly, he feels something and collapses, knocked out with a blow to the head. Cyan says she knew it would come to this, and tells him to rest for a while. Surika asks who she is, and Kieran appears saying she didn't want to get involved, but Surika already knows who she is, doesn't she? Surika bows her head, and acknowledges the demonic blade Kieran. Kieran, clearly angry, demands to know how Surika dared to attack her master. Surika says it was all just part of the process to confirm his identity. Kieran replies that she could have just contacted God instead of doing all this. But if this is how she chose to do it, then Kieran will now take this as a challenge. Surika says she should worry about the heir first, right? No. Kieran is shocked when she looks and sees the boy unconscious and covered in blood. Surika explains that Kieran's method of materialization is flawed. She's draining all of Xian's life energy. Kieran grabs him by the collar. Furious, he asks how Sean can be so weak, after drinking so much blood. Surika then says that, as a leader of the Mists, she would never refuse a battle. If Kieran truly wants to be an opponent, she cannot refuse either. Kieran is taken aback, saying that this girl is really strange. Suddenly, Sean asks Kieran why she materialized. She tells him not to worry, she's only going to crush that reckless girl. Now things are really bad, because Surika is also excited, saying it will be an honor for her. Kieran tells her not to come begging later, to which Surika responds that she's looking forward to going that far. Suddenly, a voice in the hall says, "Enough," and they recognize it as the voice of Lord Air. A portal begins to open, and everyone becomes tense. The voice commands them to now send the heir to the altar, and she agrees without hesitation. Sean is excited, saying that he's finally going to meet him, the god of darkness, Air. Some people think that the god of mist is an evil being. Someone for whom murder is as natural as eating. Someone who justifies his actions under the pretense of doing them for the world. However, he claims that the deaths of those people were actually good. By paying with their lives, they became righteous. Most people believed that this was insane logic. That this god was an idiot. Someone who pretended to protect the powerless. Sean passes through the portal and finds himself in front of a throne staircase. The god asks if he knows who he is. Sean says, obviously, he's Eri, the god of the black mist. The god asks if he is Cyan Vert and wants to know what right he has to consider himself his heir. Sean challenges him, asking if he can't feel that the power of the mist is already present in him. The god says there are 2 ways to become an heir. The first is by receiving the mist stone directly from him, and the second is when the stone itself finds the heir. Since he doesn't know Sean, it must be the second case. He knows the stone that was on the altar disappeared a year ago. What's strange is that Sean not only awakened Kieran, but also seems to be using her quite well, and his eyes don't match his age. Because of this, the god concludes that Sean belongs to a timeline he doesn't recognize. Sean becomes curious and says he thought gods knew everything. The god replies that if he's looking for an omnipotent being, he came to the wrong place. A long time ago he lost the status of a god. Sean kind of already knew that, but now the god is wondering why everything seems strangely easy for him. Sean asks what he means, and the god explains, he was just sitting there peacefully, and now the heir has appeared. Why did Sean do all his work for him? And on top of that, he brought along a very troublesome item. Thinking that Sean might be dissatisfied with the demonic blade, he suspects that he might try to obtain the power of the sacred sword for himself. Sean smiles, saying he has no interest in that. If that thing never sees the light of day, it will remain nothing more than a worthless piece of junk. The god begins to stand up, saying that Sean has some strange habits, but precautions must be taken. And as the rules dictate, raising his arm, he declares that now Sean will become the absolute creator, the heir who will succeed his power. He asks if Sean wants that. Sean remembers that in his past life, at that exact moment, he answered that he would live for his older brother. Obviously that was foolish, but at that time they didn't seem to care much about his answer. When he left, the place fell apart, and Sean was left wondering whether they even wanted something from him at all. The god says there are more important things than foolish conviction. Now Sean thinks maybe the god already knew everything that would happen. He approaches, and says he no longer has any interest or belief. The god looks confused, and Sean says he will use the power in the most selfish way possible, entirely for himself. The god says that right and wrong are determined by the individual, and asks if Sean won't regret that decision. He warns Sean to answer carefully, or he'll kill him right now. Sean says he doesn't care about the consequences of his actions. He won't take orders or follow commands from anyone. He's followed his own path, and that's all he wants. The god says Sean seems to have something in mind, and asks what it is, but Sean refuses to say. The god says all he needs to do is purify the names given to him. The rest doesn't matter. Suddenly, he appears behind Kieran and says it's time to have a little chat with his daughter. He starts pulling her cheeks, saying how much she's changed. He asks if she likes her master that much. He tries to give her a kiss, saying he's so happy about his daughter's growth, while she's yelling at him to get away. The god wants to give her all the fatherly love he can, while Kieran is asking Sean for help, who pretends not to see anything. As he leans in to give her a kiss, a pentagram appears. A magic spell begins to cast, and Kieran asks what's happening. Suddenly, she assumes a physical form. Looking at her hands, she's confused. Why does it feel like she actually has a real body now? Sean realizes that he hasn't consumed even a bit of mana. Kieran wants to know what that bastard did. He says he didn't do anything, he just gave her a little bit of his power. Now that she's in a physical form, it will be necessary for her to do what? A duel with her master. It's censored, right? But I think that's what he meant. She's shaking his face, while our guy is thinking that father and daughter really are identical. The next day, in the dorms, Brian asks Sean what that was all about. Sean says, it was nothing important, don't think too much about it. Brian says, come on young master, you can't just ignore that situation, with both girls staring each other down, sparks flying. Kieran is questioning why Sirika came so early to visit the young master. People will start gossiping about a relationship between an instructor and her student. Sirika says it's nothing. She just came to deliver a book to a very studious boy. Kieran, annoyed, says that as a leader, Sirika should act better. Sirika responds by asking why Kieran is so involved in other people's business. Protinence decides it's better not to get involved and leaves the room, saying he'll go for a walk. The two girls are at each other's throats, while Brian is sweating, not knowing what to do. The city seems busy as Sean watches everything from a pillar. He finally manages to relax a bit, but suddenly, he smells blood. Someone is thrown to the ground, gets up spitting blood, and is clearly in pain. Some guys nearby say they should try that thing. It's horrible, so it'll be fun. A blonde guy forms a ball of mana in his hand, shows it to the girl, and tells her to take a look. He pulls her mouth open, and says he brought something delicious. When a friend brings something delicious, she has to eat it. She obviously shuts her mouth in desperation, but suddenly someone yells at him to stop. One of the students was about to strike a boy with the orb, when Aaron tells him not to do that it's shameful for a noble to act that way. The blonde guy turns around and declares that he's the son of Duke Rewager, and asks who she is. She introduces herself as the princess of the Imperium of Severos. The guy smiles, realizing it's her, and says he's surprised to meet the famous 5th princess of the Empire, Lady Anne. He walks up to her and says, it's an honor to meet her. Aaron replies that she's not here to meet him and demands an explanation for the situation before her. The guy says, fine, best to ask the kid. He looks at the boy and tells him to speak up. The boy, clearly scared, is grabbed by the collar and asked if he's okay. Obviously, the boy says he's fine, nothing happened. Arian points out that it doesn't make sense for him to hide it when it's clear he's not okay, given his appearance. The boy looks away and insists that he's fine, and tells her to leave, that they were just playing. Umine starts laughing, asking if Arian heard that. Apparently, she should be the one feeling insulted. Arian says, whatever, she's taking the boy with her. But the blonde guy grabs her wrist and says she doesn't understand. She demands to know what he thinks he's doing. He says the boy already told her to leave. Aaron begins to threaten him, reminding him that he's holding the arm of an imperial princess. The blonde Rick says he doesn't care. She's just the useless fifth princess anyway. But Sean had been nearby, and heard everything. Suddenly, the guy is struck hard by Sean, who has now entered the scene like a b-boy. Aaron blushes when she sees Sean. He, however, is more curious, wondering if Hashimes is that kid standing in front of him. Two people are exchanging blows from the Empire of Garan at Fort Klein. Sean was fighting someone. She was the most powerful Shinin sword wielder of his era. Hashimes Klein. Man, I thought it was a boy. This is the reverse surprise. You think it's a guy friend? It's actually a powerful girl. She originally belonged to the Empire of CF, but for some reason, after graduating from the academy, she joined the Kingdom of Garan, and even changed her nationality. Sean blocks an attack and is thrown back, already surprised when she leaps in for a slash. He disappears and reappears behind her, landing a blow to her spine, sending the warrior crashing to the ground. At first, I thought they were training, but in reality, he killed her under orders from the Empire. The mission was to assassinate her through infiltration, but she found him first. They ended up having a kind of official duel. For Sean, there was no particular reason. He simply saw her as an incredible person, someone who had reached the peak of swordsmanship on her own, and didn't want to kill someone so talented without giving her a chance to fight. His friends start calling for Beretta, while Hashimes is in shock. Beretta begins to stand up, asking why so many idiots care about other people's business. He recognizes the boy as Sean and says he's heard rumors that Sean was on the front lines. Is he trying to get involved in their games now? Sean thinks these games are anything but fun. Injecting mana orbs into people's bodies could collapse all their mana and make them incapable of using magic ever again. Sean asks if this is the so-called game where they shove mana orbs into people's mouths. He starts conjuring dark magic and says he'll join in too. Suddenly, the guy begins to sweat nervously as Sean already creates a. The muscle gang guy climbs on top of him and asks, "What are you doing? Why isn't your mouth open yet?" Uh-oh, he's trying to shove the mana orb back into the blonde boy's mouth. Back in the dorms, Amos is lying on the bed, completely beaten up. Aaron tells her that they've already taken care of the injuries, and now it's just time to rest. Amos thanks her and says there's no way she could repay them. For some reason, Aaron is feeling proud, saying that their beloved Sean handled everything, so Amos doesn't need to worry. Sean reflects on all of Hashimos's injuries, and finds it amazing that she didn't faint after so many fractures. She truly deserves the title of strongest sword. Suddenly, Hashimos asks if he knows her. Embarrassed, she says she noticed him staring at her a lot. Sean replies that he thought she was someone he knew, but lets it go and apologizes for making her uncomfortable. Oren watches him speak and glances at the other girl who now says it's okay, though clearly a bit awkward. Suddenly, Aaron asks Hashimos where she's staying, and what if those guys come back to hurt her again. Hashimos says she's in the common dorms. Aaron then asks if she has no noble title. She replies no, she only got in through a special admission by Instructor Vayan, who had promised to help her when she got into the academy. But right after she arrived, he was expelled. Sean now understands. She lost the person who was supporting her, and says that what she's been going through is just the beginning. She might be kicked out soon. Aaron is a bit saddened by the situation, and Sean suggests that Aaron accept Hashmes as her attendant. That way she can also learn some swordsmanship from the girl. Aaron is shocked, and says, "Why are you calling that boy a girl? Don't you see he's a guy?" But Sean says that person is a girl. At that moment, Aaron's world collapses. Deep down, Hashmes apologizes and says she wasn't trying to deceive anyone. It's just that she's always preferred short hair since childhood, and people often get confused. In Demon Slayer, it was the boy who turned out to be a girl. Now in this story, it's the girl who looks like a boy. What a reversal. Aaron tearfully apologizes, saying she didn't understand and doesn't even know how Sean figured it out. Hashmus says, "It's okay, and that she should be the one apologizing. Arin then asks what Hashmos thinks about Sean's suggestion. To her, it sounds like a good idea. If Hashmos becomes affiliated with her, she won't suffer harassment anymore. She can focus on her studies and live a more comfortable life. Ahimis asks what she could possibly do for Arin. Arin replies that she's been feeling very lonely lately and needs someone close by. Hashmis thanks her and says that from now on she'll be her attendant and will never bring her shame. Arin turns to her and says she should thank Sean, but where is Sean? He's already gone. He knows that from now on she can handle things herself. Now he understands why Hashmis left the Empire of Shief. And probably, if it weren't for that awful beret, she wouldn't have lost control of her mana. Now the person who was already the strongest Shining sword in the continent has her mana intact. She might become someone difficult even for him to defeat. But that doesn't matter for now. His attention is elsewhere. Specifically on what Surika personally gave him that morning. Her mission, his first chance to help the association.
Like the video, folks? Help us out!
He remembers that the last chapter ended with him saying he was more interested in what he received, along with that card. He thinks that this will be a tough challenge, especially for a first mission. But he remembers that when she gave it to him, she said she believed in his potential. The problem is, if the missions are already this hard from the start, he doesn't even want to think about what's coming next. But suddenly he hears something nearby and boom, an explosion erupts out of nowhere. Sean wonders if a monster has invaded the academy, but what appears is a 3-meter-tall bodybuilder, asking if he's Vert. A bit awkwardly, our boy asks if the guy even knows who he is. The man says yes. He claims to have an S-rank physical level of magic, and he knows very well that Cyan Vert is the youngest member of the Vert family. This guy's name is Sharkan, and he's 11 years old. I'm just as confused. How can an 11-year-old kid be so muscular and so tall? Sharkan starts flexing his biceps, saying he's heard of all the things Sean has done, from killing creatures to surviving an encounter with a dragon. On top of that, he heard that Sean received an S-rank physical evaluation, something Sharkan himself hasn't achieved. That's why he wants to challenge Sean to a fight. It's then that Sean seems to recognize this guy, because of the mark on his chest. It represents Espana, the desert empire. Apparently this guy is the prince of that place. The country lies in a desert to the east, and in his past life the entire army of Espana revolved around one person, Asines, who made it impossible for any invading army to conquer Espana. That nation prided itself on never being conquered. However, that prince suddenly declined. He ignored his health and focused so much on training that he eventually died from overexertion. Just a regular cold. Damn. What an epic story. What Sean never expected was to run into the prince of that city right here. He's sure this never happened in his previous life, and now it's going to be a problem. Still, he decides to respond, asking if the guy wants to fight now. Set says, yes, it's the only way to know who's the strongest man, and he warns the boy that he won't accept no for an answer. But that's exactly what Sean replies. Set asks, why? The protagonist explains that fights like this need to be approved by the academy. First, they have to go to the office and submit a formal request. Set immediately wants to know where this office is, so they can go now. As soon as Sean tells him, the guy runs off, shouting that he'll be right back. Sean just thinks to himself that the guy really is all muscle, especially because the office is in the opposite direction, but he doesn't bother saying anything. Not to mention, there's no such thing as filing a request for training, but let the guy find that out for himself. Poor guy got completely tricked. The scene shifts back to the city. A man in a cloak tells Lord Zickerman that the product is ready. The man tells him not to just stand there and to notify all the clients immediately. Zickerman Albus is one of the 3 richest men on the continent. Publicly, he's known as a philanthropist, generous with his donations, but in truth, he's garbage. He forces interspecies relations. Why? Because he wants to create new hybrid races to sell on the black market. Sean is already keeping an eye on him while listening to the man say that today, the greatest product he's ever imagined will be born. Now Sean has confirmed his target, and apparently, it'll be easier than he thought. But as soon as he grabs Kieran, she says she feels a complex energy. He's confused, and she says the target seems to be hiding something. Zickerman stands in front of the cell and says that finally he has a bit of peace, and tells his money-making factory to sleep well. But then, he notices a strange black mist surrounding him. Someone behind him is already slashed. The first decapitated body drops to the ground, and the knight asks, panicked, who's there? Cynicaman, now desperate, orders them to kill whoever it is. But Sean rushes toward the man and lands a strike that makes him drop his sword. One more blow behind the knee, and the blade is already at his neck. Before the man can speak, it's over. Sean doesn't hesitate. Zickerman starts screaming, asking where the rest of the knights are. Sean just says he'll find out soon enough when he joins the others. Even though he hired a lot of people, they were useless. Dragging himself across the floor, Zickerman asks if Sean wants money, but Sean just cuts off his hand and says he already has enough of that. The bastard falls to the floor, and Sean says his name, telling him he'll be punished for the inhumane things he's done and for his involvement in the slave market. That alone is more than enough reason for him to die. However, being the kind person he is, Sean gives him 1 minute to repent and spare himself the pain. Zickerman, crying, says it doesn't matter, he'll be killed either way. He tries to justify that they're just making a living, and that the real villains are the ones interested in buying the merchandise. Sean simply says, "Your minute's up." The guy didn't even repent. Sean activates the 8 stances of the Black Mist, and starts slashing his back. Man, was that really necessary? Now that the main part is done, Sean can take a look around. Approaching one of the cells, he asks Kieran if it's here. She says yes, she's sensing 2 energies combined. He then slices the lock, and seems startled. On the ground is a girl holding an egg, seemingly dead. Sean says there's nothing strange, just a girl, but Kieran tells him to look closely. In her arms is a dragon egg. Back at home, Yukin asks where Sean got that, and our boy just brushes it off, saying he found it somewhere. Obviously, Yukin doesn't buy it, and asks what he means by found it. But Sean is more concerned about whether someone really planned to sell something this dangerous, and who the buyer was, and where it would have been delivered. Yukin then asks what they'll do if that thing suddenly hatches and turns out to be extremely dangerous. But Sean tells him not to worry, since a dragon is essentially a mass of energy that requires specific attributes. The egg will only hatch if it's continuously infused with the correct type of magic. However, right after he says that, they hear a crack. They both turn around, and the egg is starting to hatch. That's when our idiot realizes he might have messed up. A light begins to shine, and finally, the egg cracks open. From inside it comes a little girl. What did you think was going to be born? A raging dragon? No, of course it's a lowly. Yukin is panicking, asking what they're supposed to do now, but Sean is more impressed that she's a hybrid species, and the fact that she's half human makes this a much bigger problem than he imagined. Still, the little dragon girl is smiling at him and jumps into his arms for a hug. Since he was present at her birth, he's already imagining that she might think of him as her father. Suddenly, someone at home starts laughing. It's Kieran, who says it's ironic. A boy of only 11 years old is now a father. But Sean says it's all that damned girl's fault. We then see the moment when he picked up the egg and asked if they really should take it. Kieran said yes, especially because it could end up in the wrong hands. Our boy was afraid it might hatch, but she assured him that a dragon egg couldn't hatch without the right energy and without a mother. Back in the present, she says this just proves that anything can happen. Sean asks what she meant earlier when she said that the egg couldn't hatch without a mother. She responds, "That's exactly why I said anything is possible." However, the existence of a mixed race like that is definitely concerning. The very existence of that creature is dangerous. The protagonist knows that, and the worst part is that it's going to cause a massive headache. A half-human, half-beast would already be a problem, but a half-dragon makes things even harder. The world they live in is far too dangerous for something like this to exist. If anyone at the academy found out about her, the chance of her being eliminated to prevent a threat would be extremely high. On top of that, dragons are extremely proud of their race and their pure bloodline. If they discovered the existence of this child, they would certainly come after her to kill her. So, Sean begins to question, why would he take such a huge risk for someone who is destined to live such a difficult life? Maybe it would be better to just end it now. Kieran smiles and says she agrees. Maybe that really would be the best option for the child. He moves his hand toward her neck, and Kieran says this is the right choice. After all, it'll be a life full of misery. Sean keeps repeating to himself that it's better to end her life now. But then, the little girl starts to open her eyes, and just as he touches her neck, she calls him Dada. He was staring at her as if ready to kill, but the moment he hesitates, she hugs him and says, "Love." The poor guy is screwed. He realizes she's really warm. He picks her up by the arms and lifts her, saying that, apparently, now they'll have to figure something out. He tells Kieran that they're going to take care of her. But Kieran doesn't seem too thrilled about that. The scene then shifts back to the Vert household castle. Krent's mother is still wondering what she's going to do. She can't allow that damned Sean to roam free and be a danger to her precious son. That's when Excel appears and calls for his mother. He says that if something's bothering her, she can just tell him. Okay, now I'm confused about why this mother is blushing so much. What's going on here? This relationship is peculiar, right? Anyway, she walks away and says she's fine, and that nothing is bothering her. But as soon as she closes the door and tells someone to clean the information, the man says they found the bodies of several dead knights in the forest. The only survivor made it to the capital with Sean, and he's sure the person who ordered the attack was Duchess Margaret. On top of that, they lost contact with the agent at the academy, who was passing along information about Sean. Eshel says, it looks like the man didn't learn anything from what happened to his brother. The guy starts trembling, realizing that Eshel is disappointed, and he knows that Eshel isn't the type to keep people around when they let him down. Right before he's dismissed, he screams that he'll look into it himself. He swears he'll never disappoint Eshel again. Eshel puts a hand on his shoulder and says it's impressive how passionate Kellen is about his work. Then he leaves, saying he's sure his brother is hiding something. Back at the academy, Surika comes running in. Sean is there with Kiran and a piece of wood meant for the dragon, asking what she's doing there. Surika wants to know why there's a baby in the dorm. The protagonist says it's a long story, but she cuts him off saying the explanation can wait. They have more important things to deal with. She says that, apparently, our boy has been busy causing problems. She then shows that a duel between him and CF has been approved, and asks why he isn't keeping a low profile, and instead doing something like this. Is he trying to draw as much attention as possible? Sean is confused. Did the guy really submit a formal request to arrange a duel? Kiran asks what the problem is. It's just two 11-year-olds playing. But Sean knows CF isn't just any 11-year-old. He asks when the duel will be. That's when he's told it'll happen in 2 hours. And there he is, thinking this is happening way too soon. Siaf greets him, saying he's been waiting for this moment. But Sean doesn't seem very eager. Siap says he wanted a free-for-all fight, but they only allow swordplay and magic. He asks if Sean is going to use magic. As soon as Sean says no, Siaf replies that he really never disappoints. He leaps forward to strike, saying he wants to see what Sean can do with a sword. The protagonist, however, stays calm, just thinking about how fast this guy is, especially for his size. But attacks that rely purely on brute strength are easy to dodge. With a simple movement of his sword, Siaf's strike hits the ground. Sean begins to move, thinking an opponent like this is defeated using sophistication and precision. However, the prince says he won't give Sean a chance. Their swords clash, and the guy feels the pressure in his arm. Sean was managing to use a good part of his strength to counterattack, but how was he blocking such a large sword using only a rapier? Suddenly, Siav is behind him, aiming a strike at the back of his neck. Out of nowhere, Sean shears his sword and grabs the fool by the legs. Siav is confused, wondering if the bastard has gold on his back, but just as he's about to kiss the ground, he manages to get his hand down and barely saves himself. He uses the momentum to almost land a headbutt on Sean, who is impressed that the guy managed to counterattack in that situation. The audience is stunned, mouths open. People are wondering if these two are even human. Siaf just smiles. He starts laughing like a maniac, saying that yes, he was defeated in swordplay, but now, he'll put everything on the line and do whatever it takes to win. Sean says he's looking forward to it, though he thinks to himself that this is going to be exhausting. Still, Siak insists, saying he hopes Sean will also go all out. His aura starts expanding, tearing up the ground beneath him. He calls out a name and says, "Now it's truly begun." A bearded man in the audience says they've finally started using magic. Students who want to compete both in swordplay and magic show real spirit. Sirika, standing next to him, says it's clear that Sean won in fencing. They know CF has an A-rank physique, while Sean is S-rank. The outcome of the sword duel was decided from the start, but physical aptitude is only a basic factor when it comes to high-level magic. As far as he knows, Siaf possesses level 3 magic, which is the highest among the freshmen. He wants to see how Sean will respond to that. Surika, however, is fuming, wondering why that bastard is attracting so much attention. Suddenly, a hand starts emerging from the ground. It's CF's death fist. He prepares a blow, and Sean realizes it's time to use magic. He easily dodges the first attack, but seems to stumble on something. CF warns him that he won't be able to escape. A series of attacks comes rushing in, but Sean easily evades them all. Then CF activates Tooth of the Desert, and a surge of sand bursts from the ground. Suddenly, it seems Sean is being surrounded. He knows CF has at least one 3-star spell. Poor guy, just took the Gara Classic. However, once the dust settles, Sean is standing there, completely calm. One thing he realizes is that Siath could easily use level 4 magic. The problem is that winning this would put Sean in a complicated situation. Siath then asks how long he plans to keep dodging attacks. Obviously, Sean wants to know if Siath actually expected him to just take a hit to the face. Annoyed, Siath says he's just a student, and a warrior should never run from his fate. Confused, Sean replies that, as far as he knows, both of them are students. That's when Siath goes berserk and starts activating a sandstorm. The old man in the audience watches closely, while Sirika seems scared. She wants to know why he's using a 4-star magic spell. Siath launches the attack at Sean, saying he wants to see him dodge this one. Our boy just stands there and says, "Alright, I'll take this one." Meanwhile, someone grabs a baby bottle. It's Yukin, who says it's a good thing he has experience raising kids. It was a nightmare, taking care of all the younger servants. Still, he never imagined that experience would help him now. He then calls for the princess, and says it's time to eat, but suddenly, he's shocked. The girl had already grown a lot. Back in the arena, CF's attack is enclosed in a blue orb, but it's beginning to crack. Ah, I see, it was a protective shield to stop the audience from getting caught in the fight. But now it's breaking. Oscar from the barrier team can't understand how a student is doing all this. The CCA tells the chancellor that it might be best to cancel the match, but he says he wants to wait. He feels like something big is about to happen. Sean then activates a secret art, Void Sphere. Obviously Sirika didn't want him to use something like that. Suddenly, Siath's sandstorm begins to be absorbed. The professor laughs, saying the kid is impressive, while Sirika wants to kill him for letting everyone witness this. Siath's attack continues to be absorbed, and the sphere keeps growing. Then, after a moment, Sean closes his fist. Siath is left confused, not understanding what happened, and people in the crowd wonder where all that power suddenly disappeared to. No one has any idea what that black energy sphere in the middle of the arena was. Sean then asks Siath if he still wants to continue, but the poor guy is exhausted. He falls to his knees and says he can't believe he lost. He lost in swordplay and he lost in magic. At that moment, he's completely crushed. Sean feels a bit guilty for ruining the guy's spirit, but Siath punches the ground and says it's fine. He was getting tired of beating up weaklings anyway. Now he finally feels motivated again. They continue training. He then reaches out his hand and says that he is looking forward to training with him once again, and that next time he will have to accept the challenge. Sean obviously says no. He's not interested in that at all. The scene then changes to him saying that he knew dragons develop faster than other creatures. However, from one day to the next, it seemed like the child had aged 6 years. The girl is already welcoming her father. You don't know that at this rate she'll soon be his age. He tries to explain that he only took his eyes off her for a second, and suddenly this happened. Wow, man, you know it's gonna be hard to raise her here. Now, someone says that eventually he won't be able to hide her anymore. The person nearby says they could help hide the magic sword. However, a dragon like this would be something completely different, especially because it draws attention to itself. Just like today, Kira is calmly sleeping on the sofa, not caring about anything. They are just looking at the little dragon, talking about how she is growing incredibly fast. How is she already this size? The moment he went out to fight. Xiamen says she knew he was up to something, but bringing a creature like that home is something completely different. The man says, not to worry. Yukin said he would take care of the girl. Besides, the place already had a barrier, so she and Kiran would not be detected. That's when Xian hands him a letter, and says this will only be possible if he stops causing trouble. The man looks at it and says, it's a pretty bad reward for winning that fight. However, she simply leaves the room, and tells him to stop getting into trouble. It would be terrible if he ended up angering a certain person. Yugen asks what it was. The boy says, it's a warning. They want to expel them for bad conduct. The little dragon says, this can't happen to her daddy, or else everyone will end up on the street begging for money. Sean is confused, wondering how on earth she learned to say things like that. He then pats her head and says that for now, they don't need to worry. He says it would be very dangerous if he were forced to go back home. Shanine replies that they don't need to worry because it was just a small competition, especially since he saw that the letter came directly from the chancellor, not from the administration. This means the man wants to talk to him. I don't know if this was in the past, but I believe it was. The chancellor asks if he really wants to join the Order of Light. He agrees, and the man says he believes it doesn't suit him. Seeing the boy's expression, he says he's sure the boy knows that. He then decides to give him some advice, telling him to keep it in his heart. He is certain that he would find no benefit in joining the Order of Light. His fate would be suffering or something even worse. However, one thing he was sure of, joining that order would not be worth it, because that's the life of a puppet. This was the conversation he had with Main in his past life, when he was called there once. It makes him wonder what curse the old man will throw on him in this life. Yukin then comments that the child might deserve a name. We can't keep calling her little one. Sean simply replies with, Nana. The narrator was going to suggest thinking a bit more, but the girl says it's perfect. She likes the name Nana, because it's the same backward and forward, and now she's Cyan Vert. She spins around Sean, who wonders how she knows his last name. The scene then changes to the chancellor's office. He is thoughtful and impatient. Because of Cyan Vert, he already knew the boy had great potential, but he saw him swallow a rank 4 spell by himself. Someone with that much power should be feared. However, the strangest part is that he didn't even seem to be trying, which makes him wonder what this boy is truly capable of. Kenny knows that Candle was the teacher of Emperor Dion and Princess Diana. He is one of the few 9-star mages on this continent. After Princess Diana's death, he decided to dedicate himself to cultivating new talents at the Royal Academy. But what leaves Cyan confused is that he always saw this man as a pacifist. So why in his past life did he suddenly get involved with the Empire's throne affairs? He pauses for a moment and is sure that man was still a trickster. As always, hitting the wall, he notices that it had a barrier, not just any barrier, but a 9-star one, even knowing he was coming. Apparently, the man wanted to test him. He was eager to pass this test. Candle was smiling, curious to see how the boy would deal with the barrier. Then, the troublemaker breaks his window, lands in front of him and calls for the chancellor, introducing himself as Cyan Vert, a first-year student. The old man realizes the boy did the obvious thing, but he has to admit defeat. He then asks if he received the competition notice. The boy says yes, he received the notice from the chancellor, but he was sure of certain things as soon as he saw the barrier. That so-called notice was just an excuse to test him. Candle admits it was, and that his method was quite ordinary, but it's undeniable that it worked. Because of that, however, the warning would not be removed, unless he tries to convince him. The old man then says, "You may ask me something." Sean questions whether the old man prefers the prosperity of the empire or the honor of his own family. Candle remains silent, saying it is quite a bold question, but neither of those is his problem. Sean then asks, if should Emperor Dion and the third princess show ambition for the throne, he would simply stand by and offer no support to either side. The old man replies that this is not only boldness, but already recklessness. Meanwhile, Cyan thinks that this man, in his past life, told him he would become a puppet, but right now he was no different. He remembers that, in his past life, the chancellor played an important role in helping Prince Lionel ascend to the throne, a prince known for his violent nature and for having killed all his brothers. On the day the chancellor questioned those murders, he was imprisoned for treason. Now the old man slams the table and says, "This doesn't make sense." He asks if Cyan really believes that the peace built over more than 100 years could end so easily. He thought the boy was talented, but apparently, he is nothing more than an ignorant child. Sean ignores the insult and says that both his daughter and the second princess have already died from illness. Furthermore, the third and fourth princes are forces that cannot be ignored, and the house of Empress Cassandra is beginning to hunger for power. They would be capable of anything to take the top of the empire, especially since the peace in this place is barely holding together. And when all this happens, it would also mean the end of the academy. Kendall is impressed that an 11-year-old boy knows the entire current political scenario. He then asks what Sheenan's intention was in saying all this. Sean says he is here to make a deal that will help bring peace to his family and to the academy. All he asks is that the warning be removed. The old man, however, looks at him as if he were a fool. He summons a magic circle and asks what strength Sheenan will use to resolve this. He points his finger downward, saying Cyan will be crushed along with his arrogance. The chains of judgment appear, and pull Cyan upward. Sean immediately realizes the chancellor is trying to test him again. The old man says that Cyan may be powerful, but he will not easily escape such an ability, and accuses him of being overly confident. The boy then asks for permission to show what he is capable of. At that moment, the old man is startled. Cyan has activated an adaptation of the void sphere. The chains seem to be getting swallowed, and the old man is in disbelief that a level 1 ability is consuming his magic. The energy continues to be absorbed, and the sphere grows larger, making the old man wonder what the limit of this boy's potential is. Finally, the attack dissipates along with the chains. Sean asks if he has proven himself enough. Immediately, Candace says he will remove the warning, though he doesn't believe that is all the boy wants. Sean replies that it is. All he wants is for there to be no trouble at the academy. The old man asks if he is sure. He says yes. The truth is, he really does not want to see the academy fail again. Meanwhile, in the city at sunset, someone says they bought a lot of sweets, but that's what happens when you have a child at home. It is Ken, who is happy just imagining Nana eating all of them. However, he suddenly feels a chill. The place is strangely quiet, or is he just imagining it? He slowly walks, while looking around, until he senses a presence in the shadows, and tells it to show itself. Someone begins walking toward him, and Yukin is startled, dropping the sweets to the ground. Honestly, I thought he would react, but the poor guy simply vanished. Sean had promised the chancellor that as soon as he left there he would attend all the classes. However, at that moment, he is tired, and stuck in that place. It's boring to study everything he learned 30 years ago. Since he has no missions to do, maybe he'll go train. But that's when someone appears behind him, and asks where he thinks he's going. It's Arin, who says the class isn't over yet. He casually says he's just going to the bathroom, but she calls him a liar, knowing that isn't the right direction. Meanwhile, a man named Rishimo stands behind her, calling her Lady Aim. Sean then asks if she allows him to call her by her personal name. She tells him to stop changing the subject, but says yes, only in private. However, she wants to know why he is still so formal with her. The boy says it's because she is royalty, and he is just a common citizen of the empire, so he cannot be too familiar. Someone then approaches in the middle of their discussion. He calls for Ironin, and suddenly she appears. Startled, Sean looks to the side and sees a man on the stairs, saying it's been a long time since they last met. It is brother Fabian and brother Nerobian. Apparently, someone likes Bian. Aaron greets them, and they ask why she is surrounded by commoners, or if those people are her servants. Sean knows that the members of House Nero always belittle the princess. They then ask if the boy is Cyan Vert. Sean simply replies that it is a pleasure to meet them. They meet, and Sean introduces himself as the youngest of House Verde. The men reply that he doesn't need to introduce himself, because they saw his duel, and it was incredible. They are certain he will be invited to the next social gathering. They say they should talk more and not remain strangers. Sean notices that Harin is being completely ignored. The men place a hand on his shoulder and say, "This is an opportunity few people get." Arin just stands there until Nerobian puts a hand on her shoulder and says that without this person, the princess should not think too highly of herself. Someone like her should know her place. As the men walk away, Resamos asks if they are really princes. Eshel says, yes, and that, just as the saying goes, blood is thicker than water. But Sean says he doesn't think that's what's happening in this situation. To them she was clearly worse than a stranger. Water and blood meant nothing when it came to power. That's what she needed to understand. The fact that they treated her so coldly showed that they had some fear or concern. He tells her not to be shaken by it, but the poor girl is already blushing. Sean leaves while she remains there, red-faced from his words of encouragement. Back home, Nana is in bed. But Sean finds it strange that he doesn't see either Kieran or Yukin. Then Kieran appears and asks if he can't see that the little girl is sleeping. She asks what he wants from her. Sean tells her to find Yukin. She looks confused and asks if he thinks she's some kind of dog to go around hunting for him. But suddenly she starts sniffing the air and says she smells blood. In a nearby alley, Ken is lying on the ground, being attacked. Some men are laughing while a blonde man says he should have responded when they first called him. Now things have gotten complicated. It's ironic, he says, that the boy has only one night, and he's terrible at his job. He then announces that it's time to cut Ken to pieces and deliver him as a gift to their master. He could thank his boss later. This is the price he will pay for crossing Barrett of Luimnella. But Yukin, still on the ground, simply replies that it's fine. The man is confused and asks what he's talking about. Even beaten, Yukin tells them to go ahead and do what they said. Barrett then tells everyone that it seems he has lost his mind, so it's time to finish it by killing him. But suddenly, from above the alley, someone asks what they are doing. Well, if it's who I think it is, the narrator says, I think you're all going to your next life. Sure enough, a man appears, sword in hand, and it turns out to be Sean. Yukin sees him and, in his injured state, hears Sean comment that it seems they've roughed up his poor boy. Barrett, however, is excited that Sean appeared on his own. This is exactly what he had planned. Sean only replies that he's looking forward to seeing what Barrett will do. He charges toward them, activating the 8th instance of the violent barrage. A tap to one man's neck, a flick to another's forehead. Soon everyone in the alley is being thrown aside. Barrett cannot believe that all the men he hired are unable to defeat this boy. What kind of monster is this? He starts cursing Cyan Vert and says he's going to kill him, but before he can use magic, he's already been kneed in the stomach and thrown against a wall. Cyan tells him he hasn't changed at all, and asks if tormenting the weak is really that fun. Barrett says that what he does in his free time is none of Cyan's business, and asks if Cyan plans to kill him. Cyan remembers that, in his past life, this man, the eldest son of House Cyan, became the most powerful figure in the kingdom of Garin. He was infamous for beating his own servants to death and burning small animals for entertainment, until one day his madness crossed the line. He killed one of his classmates and claimed he was just practicing magic. He was expelled, and Cyan was given a mission by the purging squad to eliminate him. Cyan will never forget what he saw that day. When he arrived at the man's mansion, in the basement was a pile of servants' corpses. Naturally, Cyan tortured him to give him a painful death. But even while suffering, the man kept smiling and telling Cyan to get it over with. That was because he was already bored of his own games. Now Cyan realizes that killing him in the past was not truly a punishment for a monster like this, especially since he had already done everything he wanted. It was a completely inadequate price for the lives he had taken. Cyan grabs him by the mouth and draws a mana orb. Barrett asks what he's doing, and warns that Cyan won't get away with this, because he is the future of the kingdom of Garin. But Cyan just shoves his hand into his throat and says, Barrett likes to talk a lot. His biggest mistake, Cyan says, wasn't insulting him. He could say whatever he wanted behind Cyan's back, but what he should never have done was hurt. Barrett begins writhing on the ground. A strange purple aura starts to leak from him, and someone above is watching everything. It's none other than Exhal's informant, who thinks he needs to report this urgently. This will definitely interfere with his plans. But then Silica puts a knife to his neck and says she's found the one who's been following her boy. Cyan approaches Yukin, who apologizes, saying he has brought shame to his lord. Seeing him in such a state, Cyan thinks it's truly pitiful to see the poor guy like this. He then asks why, as a servant, Yukin would get involved in a fight he knew he couldn't win. Was that his idea of loyalty? Cyan understands what he was trying to do, but the best choice in this case would have been to run away. He didn't need him risking his life in the name of loyalty, so he tells him not to do anything so foolish again. The poor battered Yukin only asks for forgiveness. Cyan then says that the leader can show himself. Suddenly, a group from the purging squad appears, asking if it was that obvious. Cyan replies that it's obvious when so many people show up together. At that moment, Circa appears, saying she has brought him a gift, and throws Kelly to the ground. Immediately Cyan recognizes him as the one who has been following him recently. She seems impressed that he already had that information. Cyan says he had a hunch. She replies that, as always, he is very capable. Not only is he much stronger than any other assassin of the mist, but he can also negotiate directly with the chancellor, and he has the mental fortitude to wield the magic sword. Truly, he deserves the title of successor, but the problem is that he keeps causing trouble. Cyan says he's noted all of that, but warns that he will always refuse to be just a victim. Whoever dares hurt the people close to him will be crushed. Circa takes this as him saying he wants to protect those people, and says she understands. He then says he's leaving, and trusts in the successor's decisions. But before that, she tells him not to forget to deal with that person. Kelly asks what Cyan plans to do with him, and if he's going to kill him. Cyan replies that he's learned death is far too easy. Desperate, Kelly says that if Cyan thinks he'll reveal anything, he can forget it. But Cyan says he knows Kelly is none other than Kellen, the right-hand man of ill. Kelly is shocked, wondering how this bastard already has that information. Cyan remembers this man very well, always at his brother's side, filled with jealousy when they were close during the wars. Still, Kellen was a real problem. Perhaps the best option was to kill him now. The problem was that doing so would send certain information to his brother, meaning it was time to use this man in his plan instead. Kellen, desperate, asks what Cyan is doing. Cyan activates the creation of a psychic clone. A cloud of mist starts entering the man's mouth and eyes. The scene changes completely to a castle. In the arena, a man attacks Auron, but she blocks it and tells him he will have to do better than that. However, he appears behind her and puts a sword to her neck, declaring victory. Auron tells him to stop calling her Your Highness, and admits she really can't beat him. He apologizes to Her Highness, and she tells him to learn and improve. Then they hear the sound of heavy training nearby. It's Yukin, taking a hard blow to the stomach, a kick behind the knee, and being thrown to the ground. Cyan is impressed that he can take such a beating, considering he was just an ordinary worker. On top of that, he has good stamina, so maybe he could be useful in the future. Cyan asks, is he's okay, and Yukin, spitting blood, says he's fine. Cyan knows training must be hard, because at any moment they could be attacked again, just like with Barrett. Yukin then brings up Kellen and asks if he's going to be a problem. Sean says there's nothing to worry about, now he's on their side. Sean recalls the moment he absorbed that energy. Yukin was right beside him, and Kellen's body fell to the ground. Sean felt exhausted since he hadn't used that technique in a long time. The Shadow's Psyche is a level 9 darkness attribute. It creates a new shadow personality inside a person, allowing Sean to control them. Even in his past life, he had only used it once. He then tells the man to say who he is. Kellen introduces himself as Kelly Diegos, a guardian knight of Velius. He had been ordered to come to this city to observe Lord Xian. Sean is pleased with how obedient he is, and asks who his master is. Kellen says he originally served Lord Ieli, but now he wishes to serve Lord Xian. Sean agrees, and says his first mission is to return to Shell and report everything. Sean tells him. Kellen agrees to obey. Ken is watching with determination, and Sean finds it unsettling how well that magic worked. Aaron asks if he's there training with the knight. Sean humbly answers yes, but admits to himself he could have just said he was there to play cards. She then says that she has been practicing her swordsmanship with Ricimus ever since the recent incident. Cyan remembers what she's talking about. Everyone had heard that Verite Lu was found beaten in front of the infirmary. However, the worst part was not that he couldn't speak about what had happened, but that he could no longer use magic. What Shinin found strange was Ricimang's reaction. He thought Rumos would have been happy about this event. Suddenly, Nuna comes flying through the skies, shouting for Xian. Both of them look up, and Xian asks what happened, since he had left Kirin in charge of her. Obviously the lazy one had been sleeping, right? Aaron grabs Nuna wanting to know where this crazy child came from. While Nuna is screaming that she found her daddy, Har becomes confused about this daddy business. But Nuna is clearly pointing at Xian. Now, the girl is on her phone, wanting to know since when and with whom. While the fool Xian doesn't know how to explain, time passes, and he has told them everything. Hara feels relieved to learn that Nana is not his real blood daughter, but she didn't imagine the boy had such a soft side. Yukin, on the other hand, is worried, because they would be expelled from the academy if this was discovered. However, Atenane tells him not to worry. She would never tell anyone. Xian is impressed by her promise. Honestly, he should have made her promise before telling her, right? Aaron looks at Resimos and asks if she can confirm this. Resimos says there's nothing to worry about, especially since it's not like she has other friends besides them. That ruins Aaron's cheerful mood. Xian asks why she made that promise, and Resimos replies that she pities the girl. Someone who is neither dragon nor human won't be accepted anywhere. Nana was lucky to at least find them. With that said, Resimos says she will have to visit Xian's dorm sometimes. Not to see him, of course. She wants to visit Nada. Xian says that's fine, but everything must remain in complete secrecy. The silly girl blushes, thinking she now has a secret just between them. In reality, the secret is known by 5 people, but okay. With that he leaves, and Risamos waves goodbye. But looking back, she feels something strange. Aaron seemed very excited, and Risamos noticed that she appeared to have gotten closer to Xian. However, back home, Xian still gets scolded by Kirin, who tells him to tell her everything, including the fact that he has a magic sword. Xian tells her to be quiet, especially since all of this happened because she was sleeping. Yukin suggests that maybe they should go out more with Nana. Perhaps she ran off because she had been stuck indoors for too long. Xian thinks that might be a good idea. That's when we see 2 people flying with wings. A white-haired man notices something strange and stops mid-air. The woman beside him asks what it is, and the man, Lord Lucan, replies that he senses a smell of weakness. He asks where they are, and the woman says they have arrived in Huan, but they are close. Lucan realizes they are near the High Academy, and says they will have to delay their return because he senses the presence of something that should not be allowed to live. Meanwhile, in an open area near Ren, Aine tells Nana not to go too far, because it's dangerous, while Xian thinks it's a good idea for her to enjoy herself, since they are far from ruin. He believes his secret is safe enough, and that she can get some fresh air. Kirin teases him, saying he seems to be enjoying playing house, and all he needs is to make the princess the mother. However, suddenly they feel a chill, and Kirin immediately warns that something is approaching. Lucan calls it abominable. Yukan shouts for Nana to be careful and barely saves her from being hit by a laser. Xian sees they are safe and tells everyone to stay behind him. The 2 land from the sky, and the group wonders what they are doing there. Superior dragons, and 2 of them at that. Lucan then says he now knows where the stench is coming from. The existence of such a thing is revolting. The red-haired dragon asks how such an abomination came into existence. questioning whether Cyan owns this half-breed and how he has a magic sword. Kieran is furious at being treated like a mere object, but Catalina tells her to stay quiet, saying she has become a human's toy. Burin responds by asking if Catalina wants to die, and just as she is about to attack, Lucan stops her. He explains that he has no interest in this fight, since they don't enjoy battling inferior creatures. However, they would have to hand over the half-dragon girl to them. Such a half-human, half-dragon existence would be worth valuable study. If they handed her over, everyone's life would be spared. Cyan tells them all to shut up. Lucan can't believe the boy's audacity and repeats his command, calling him a winged crocodile, and telling him to stay quiet. Obviously, the man is about to lose his temper. Cyan nearly takes a laser to the face. Yukin calls out for him, but Cyan tells him not to worry, and to stay behind him. It is undeniable that the technique Lucan used was terrifying. Lucan says this is why one cannot deal with inferior creatures. Cyan then activates the 9th instance of the Black Mist, the manifestation of the magic sword. I mess up about 10 times when I try to pronounce those enormous magic spells, but there he is. Our boy, looking like a burnt matchstick. Both dragons recognize that power as the exiled ones. He says the day is full of surprises, but in the end, the boy is nothing more than an inferior creature. The thing is, that creature is suddenly right next to him, and he's startled because he has no idea when he appeared there. The dragon takes a flurry of stabbing attacks. He calls the boy a reckless human, slashes at him, and stretches out his hand, activating a shockwave. A magic circle forms above Cyan, and he takes the attack head-on. However, he activates one of Vamasa's techniques, appears behind Lucan, and summons another blade storm. The dragoness, Catalina, is forced to step in to defend. Lucan tells her not to get involved because this fight isn't hers, but she simply says not to worry. There's no way she could lose. That fire barrier she's using has been refined for over 1,000 years. It should be impossible for a human, who doesn't even live 100 years, to break through. Until Cyan activates the 8 petals. Suddenly, we're back on Mount Ro. 8 slashes strike the barrier, shattering it. She's left wondering how this is possible. And then just like that, Cyan's slash has cut her down entirely. She disintegrates right there. Truly dead. Lucan, confused, asks what Cyan really is. Someone with mere powers of the nether shouldn't possess this much strength. He demands an answer, but since Cyan refuses to give one, Lucan decides to treat him as a serious opponent. Cyan notices Lucan activating the polymorph ability of his magic circle. The dragon begins to emerge, canceling his human form and returning to his natural state. His eyes change, his teeth sharpen, his massive wings spread wide. He roars in Cyan's face, but Cyan leaps toward him, saying that he knows this is the moment when the dragon is most vulnerable. Already above his wings, Lucan realizes that perhaps Cyan knows about the weakness in polymorph. Cyan delivers a direct blow right to his forehead. Lucan calls him reckless, but is already thinking he needs to escape quickly. Cyan just smiles, and says, it's too late. Activating the giant tree root technique directly into the dragon's head. Dark energy spreads throughout Lucan's body, and he writhes in agony in the sky. Moments later, we see Yukin calling out for Cyan. He seems shocked, and covers Nana's eyes. Lucan has already carved up the dragon, and started roasting the meat. Dragon meat of this kind is rare. Nana says she wants a piece. At that moment, Cyan's brother learns that he's working with a mysterious group. Link explains that the agents they had sent were killed by this force. Eshel asks if that's all, and the man confirms, but Eshel finds something strange. When that person left earlier, he was full of anxiety and fear. Yet now he seems calm and collected, like a completely different person. Eshel says he understands, but has one more question. As Eshel stares at him, he realizes the man has caught on to something. Suddenly, the man places a hand over his chest, and says, "May the grace of Lumendal be with you." Eshel smiles, thanks him for the answer, and tells him not to worry too much. But Eshel already knows, he'll have to be far more careful now. Since suspicion has begun, there's no turning back. He must at least make sure he doesn't become a problem for Cyan. As he leaves the room, he runs right into a maid. He remembers she's the one who used to look after Cyan. He asks what she's doing there, and E says he invited her. He asks if she's Emily, and she confirms. She says she wanted to ask a little favor, blushing all the while. "Girl, you'd better run." Meanwhile, at the dragon base, someone asks if Lucan and Catalina have truly disappeared. A man says that both their energies vanished near Rouen. Obviously, it's strange that the energy of an 8-star dragon could just disappear like that. From their drained stones, they can tell the two were likely defeated. But when they scouted the area, all they found were traces of a battle. One of them asks, how could anyone kill those two and not leave even a trace of magic? The green crystal says it's only possible if the attacker had the dark attribute, but they only know of one person in the kingdom strong enough to kill those two, and that person does not have the dark attribute. Which means there's someone powerful out there they know nothing about. The man says the only person at the Royal Academy with the dark attribute is a boy named Cyan Vert. On top of that, there are rumors he encountered an evil dragon at the front lines and survived. If that's the case, perhaps he was also involved in the disappearance of those two providers. The green crystal says it's all a strange coincidence, and they'd better keep an eye on him. Then he tells someone named Luna of Rain River to send his granddaughter.